Victoria Langford stood behind her glass desk on the 63rd floor, her perfectly manicured fingers resting on a termination letter she had no intention of filing. The man before her, Ethan Cole, restaurant employee, single father, nobody, was about to be tested in a way that had broken stronger people. She'd watched them all crumble. The tears, the begging, the desperate promises. But when she delivered the words, "You're fired," Ethan didn't flinch. He simply looked at her with eyes that had seen real loss and said, "Just promise me one thing. Don't tell my daughter I failed her." In that moment, something Victoria had buried years ago beneath ambition and armor began to crack, and neither of them would ever be the same. If you want to see how a billionaire CEO learns what real strength looks like, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The test was simple. Victoria Langford had perfected it over 7 years of running Langford Global Enterprises with an iron fist wrapped in Valentino. She would call someone into her office, usually someone expendable, someone who wouldn't be missed, and deliver the words with clinical precision. "You're fired." Then she would watch. Watch them break. Watch them reveal who they really were when the safety net disappeared. It wasn't cruelty, she told herself. It was research. Understanding people. Knowing what they were made of when you stripped away the comfortable lies they told themselves about dignity and principle. Today's subject was Ethan Cole. Victoria had selected him carefully from the personnel files of Celestial, the upscale restaurant on the building's ground floor that Langford Global owned as a casual afterthought. Ethan wasn't management. He wasn't even wait staff. He worked prep in the back, chopping vegetables and cleaning stations, the kind of job that made people invisible. Perfect. She'd had her assistant Morgan call him up during his shift. "Ms. Langford wants to see you immediately, 63rd floor." Now he stood in her office, and Victoria studied him with the same attention she gave quarterly earnings reports. Mid-30s, she estimated. Tall, but not imposing, with dark hair that needed a trim and a frame that suggested he'd once been athletic, but had let it slide under the weight of long hours and longer nights. His uniform was clean but worn, and there was a tiredness around his eyes that went deeper than one bad night's sleep. "Mr. Cole," Victoria said, not inviting him to sit. The chair across from her desk remained deliberately empty. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, ma'am." His voice was quiet, even. Not nervous, not defensive, just present. "I've been reviewing personnel files across all Langford properties," she continued, her tone as smooth as the polished marble beneath their feet. "Looking for inefficiencies, redundancies, places where we're carrying dead weight." She watched his face. Most people started sweating by now, started anticipating. Ethan simply waited. "Your file is interesting, Mr. Cole. You've been with Celestial for 18 months. Never late, never absent, no complaints from management, perfectly adequate in every measurable way." She let the word adequate hang in the air like a knife. But adequate isn't exceptional, and Langford Global demands exceptional. "I understand," Ethan said. "Do you?" Victoria stood, walking around her desk with practiced grace. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step calibrated to intimidate. She'd learned this from her father, how to own a room, how to make someone feel small without ever raising your voice. "Because, from where I stand, Mr. Cole, you're a 34-year-old man chopping onions for minimum wage in the kitchen of a restaurant where the cheapest entree costs more than you make in a day. That doesn't suggest understanding. That suggests failure." For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not anger. Something quieter, sadder. But he said nothing. Victoria moved closer, close enough to see a small scar above his left eyebrow, close enough to notice his hands were rough from work, but his nails were clean. "I'm going to be direct with you, Mr. Cole, because I believe in honesty even when it's uncomfortable. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and HR will process your final check." This was the moment they broke. But Ethan didn't break. He took a slow breath, and when he spoke, his voice was steady. "May I ask why?" "I just told you why. You're adequate. We need exceptional." "I see." He nodded slightly, processing. "Will there be any kind of formal documentation? For my records? Victoria felt a flicker of surprise. No pleading, no shock. Just practical questions. If you require it, yes. I don't need it for myself, Ethan said. But my daughter, she's 7, sometimes she asks about my work. She's proud that I work in a fancy building. He paused, and for the first time his composure cracked, just slightly. Could you promise me something, Miss Langford? Whatever official reason you give, whatever paperwork exists, don't let it say I failed. Don't let there be a record that says I wasn't good enough. I can handle losing the job. I can handle starting over, but I can't handle my daughter thinking I failed her. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She'd heard everything over the years, threats disguised as requests, bargaining that masqueraded as negotiation. But this raw, undefended love for a child, this was something her test had never accounted for. Your daughter, Victoria heard herself say. Lily, she's 7, smart as hell and twice as stubborn. For the first time, Ethan smiled, and the transformation was remarkable. The tired man disappeared for a moment, replaced by someone who still remembered joy. She wants to be an astronaut, studies the planets every night before bed. She thinks I'm the one who teaches her about the stars, but really, she teaches me. Victoria's throat felt tight. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to her about love without wanting something in return. Mr. Cole, I don't think you understand the situation. I understand perfectly, ma'am. You're firing me because I'm not exceptional enough for your company, and you're probably right. I'm just a guy who shows up, does his work, and goes home to his kid. Nothing special about that. But Lily, his voice grew quieter, more intense. Lily lost her mother 3 years ago, cancer. And every single day since then, I've been trying to be enough. Enough parent, enough provider, enough stability in a world that took her mom away. So I don't care what you write in your files about me. Fire me for performance, fire me for redundancy, fire me because you don't like my face. But please, I'm asking you as one human being to another, don't create a paper trail that says I failed. Because one day she might see it, and I won't, let her grow up thinking her dad wasn't good enough. The office fell silent except for the faint hum of the city 63 floors below. Victoria had built her empire on reading people, on understanding their weaknesses and leveraging them. But she had no framework for this. For someone who had lost everything that mattered and was still standing, still protecting what remained with quiet, fierce dignity. How old was she? Victoria asked, her voice strange to her own ears. Your wife, when she died. 32, same age as me at the time. Ethan's eyes grew distant. We knew for 6 months before. That was almost worse than losing her, watching her fight, watching her get weaker, knowing no amount of money or medicine or prayer was going to change the ending. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Ethan nodded, accepting the condolence without performance. Look, Ms. Langford, I know this isn't your problem. You run a billion-dollar company. You make hard decisions every day. I'm just one guy in the kitchen. But that little girl, she's my whole world. So I'm asking, not as an employee, because clearly I'm not that anymore, just as a father, please. Victoria turned away from him, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. From up here, the city looked like a circuit board, all clean lines and organized chaos. She'd always loved this view. It reminded her that she was above it all, separate, safe. But right now, it just made her feel cold. You're not fired, Mr. Cole, she heard herself say. Ma'am? Victoria turned back to face him, and she could see the confusion in his expression. This was a test, one I've administered many times to many people. The goal was to see how you respond to sudden crisis, to loss of security. Most people reveal their true character in those moments. Ethan's face hardened. You test people by pretending to fire them? Yes? Why? It was a fair question, and Victoria found she didn't have a good answer. Because my father taught me that people are only honest when they're desperate? Because I need to know who can be trusted when the stakes are real? Because I've been hurt by people who lied when it mattered? Because understanding human nature is essential to effective leadership, she said instead, the corporate answer smooth and meaningless. That's not leadership, Ethan said quietly. That's control. There's a difference. The words struck deeper than they should have. I see. And you're an expert on leadership? No, ma'am. I'm an expert on failure. Real failure, not your simulated version. I failed to save my wife. I failed to give my daughter the childhood she deserved. I fail every single day in 1,000 small ways, but I show up anyway. I keep trying anyway. That's not leadership. That's just being human. Victoria had been raised by Harrison Langford, a man who believed emotion was weakness and love was leverage. She'd built walls so high and thick that nothing could penetrate them. But Ethan's words found cracks she didn't know existed. What would you have done, she asked, if this had been real? If you were actually fired? Ethan considered the question seriously. I'd have gone straight to Lily's school and picked her up early. Taken her to the park, the one with the rocket ship playground she loves. Let her play until she was tired, then taken her for ice cream even though it's too close to dinner. And at bedtime, when she asked about my day, I'd tell her I had an adventure. That sometimes life changes direction, but we're going to be fine because we have each other. You wouldn't look for another job immediately? File for unemployment? Panic? Of course I'd panic, Ethan said with a soft laugh. Just not in front of her. Kids don't need to carry their parents' fear. My panic, my stress, my terror about rent and bills and how I'm going to keep her fed, that's mine to carry. Her job is to be 7, to believe in astronauts and possibilities and dads who have everything under control even when they don't. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, some long calcified part of herself beginning to thaw. I need someone in building operations, she said abruptly. Facilities management. It's technically a promotion. Better pay, better hours, health insurance that actually covers things. Would you be interested? Ethan looked at her warily. Is this another test? No. This is me recognizing that I was wrong about you. You're not adequate, Mr. Cole. You're extraordinary. Not because of what you do, but because of why you do it. I chop vegetables, Miss Langford. That doesn't make me extraordinary. You love your daughter more than your pride, Victoria said. You asked me to protect her image of you, even at the cost of your own dignity. That's extraordinary. That's something I've never seen in this office, and I've had executives with 7-figure salaries sit in that chair. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What would this job entail? Building maintenance, vendor management, ensuring all Langford Global properties are operating smoothly. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. And it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. No late nights, no weekend shifts. Time with your daughter. Why are you doing this? It was the same question Victoria had been asking herself. Why did this man's story matter? Why did his daughter's face, a child she'd never met, suddenly feel important? Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten, Victoria said honestly. That strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a father asking that his child never know he failed, even if it means he gets nothing in return. Ethan studied her face, and Victoria had the uncomfortable sensation of being truly seen for the first time in years. I'll take the job, he said finally, but not because you feel guilty about your test. I'll take it because my daughter deserves better than watching her father come home exhausted at midnight smelling like fryer grease. She deserves a dad who can help with homework and make dinner, and maybe once in a while take her to the planetarium on a Saturday without worrying about shift coverage. Then it's settled. Report to HR tomorrow morning. Morgan will handle the paperwork. Thank you, Ms. Langford. Ethan extended his hand. Victoria shook it, noting the rough calluses, the steady grip. You can call me Victoria. I'd rather not, ma'am. You're still my boss. Boundaries are important. Another surprise. Another small crack in Victoria's armor. As you wish, Mr. Cole. After he left, Victoria stood alone in her office for a long time, watching the city lights begin to glow as evening settled over Manhattan. She'd conducted her test successfully. She'd learned what she needed to know about Ethan Cole, but she'd also learned something about herself, and that terrified her more than any quarterly earnings report ever could. 3 weeks later, Victoria found herself doing something unprecedented, leaving her office at a reasonable hour. It was barely 7 p.m., practically afternoon by her usual standards. But she'd been restless all day, unable to focus on the acquisition reports Morgan kept bringing her. Finally, she'd given up and decided to do something she almost never did: walk through the building unannounced. The Langford building was 42 stories of steel and glass, housing not just the corporate headquarters but also luxury retail on floors 1 through 3, the upscale Celestial restaurant on the ground floor, and various high-end offices and boutiques throughout. Victoria owned every square foot, but she rarely saw any of it beyond her executive floor. Tonight, though, she took the elevator down to the mechanical floor where building operations was housed. She told herself she was conducting a random inspection, exercising proper oversight. But the truth, the part she wouldn't admit even to herself, was that she was curious about Ethan Cole. She found him in the facilities office, hunched over a computer, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed what appeared to be HVAC maintenance logs. He'd traded his restaurant uniform for simple work clothes: dark pants, a Langford building polo, steel-toed boots. But the concentration on his face was the same, that quiet intensity she'd noticed in her office. "Mr. Cole," he looked up, startled. "Ms. Langford, I wasn't expecting. Is everything all right?" "I'm conducting a walkthrough, making sure everything is running smoothly." Ethan stood, closing the laptop. "Of course. Would you like to see the maintenance schedules? We just completed the quarterly elevator inspections, and I've been working with the vendors on the cooling system efficiency reports." "You've been here 3 weeks, and you're already reviewing efficiency reports?" "Someone has to." Ethan shrugged. "The previous facilities manager, Mr. Brennan, was a good guy, but he'd gotten comfortable. A lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of vendor contracts that haven't been renegotiated in years. I found a lighting contract where we're paying 30% above market rate." Victoria felt a spark of interest. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, Ethan walked her through his findings with the same quiet competence he'd shown in everything else. No showboating, no trying to impress. Just clear, logical explanations of problems and proposed solutions. He'd identified 6 vendor contracts worth renegotiating, 3 maintenance issues that needed immediate attention, and a scheduling inefficiency that was costing them thousands in overtime. "This is excellent work," Victoria said finally. "Why didn't Brennan catch any of this?" "He probably did, at some point, but when you're in a job for 20 years, you stop seeing the problems. They become normal. Sometimes you need fresh eyes. And you have fresh eyes." "I have motivated eyes," Ethan corrected. "This job means I can pick Lily up from school. That's worth paying attention to details." "How is she? Your daughter?" The question surprised them both. Victoria didn't ask personal questions. It wasn't her style, but something about Ethan made her curious about the life he led outside these walls. "She's good. Great, actually. Joined the science club at school. They're building model rockets next month." His whole face softened when he talked about her. "She's been drawing blueprints every night. They're wildly impractical. One of them includes a swimming pool in the cockpit, but she's so proud of them." "You encourage her creativity." "I encourage her dreams. There's a difference." Ethan leaned against the desk, and for a moment the professional distance between them felt less rigid. "When Sarah, my wife, was sick, Lily started having nightmares. Terrible ones. She'd wake up screaming, convinced that her mom was disappearing, that the world was ending. The doctor said it was normal, just her way of processing fear. But I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand watching her be afraid." "What did you do?" "Started reading to her about space, about how big the universe is, how there are billions of stars and planets and possibilities out there. How even when things feel dark and scary here on Earth, there's this whole cosmos full of light and wonder. It helped. The nightmares didn't stop completely, but they changed. Instead of dreaming about losing her mom, she started dreaming about exploring Mars." Victoria found herself unexpectedly moved. "You gave her something bigger to think about." "I gave her permission to look up instead of down. And honestly, it helped me too. When you're watching someone you love die, when you feel powerless and small, sometimes you need to remember that the universe is bigger than your pain." The words hung between them, honest and raw. Victoria had spent her entire adult life avoiding this kind of vulnerability, this kind of undefended truth. But hearing Ethan speak about his daughter, about his loss, about finding light in darkness, it made something inside her ache. "I should let you get back to work," she said, retreating into formality. "Actually, I was about to head out. It's almost 7:30. I promised Lily we'd video chat before her bedtime. Video chat? She's at my sister's place tonight. Rachel watches her when I have to work late, which thankfully isn't often anymore. But Lily and I have a rule. We always say goodnight even if I'm not physically there. That's important to her. It's important to both of us. After Sarah died, I made a lot of promises to Lily. I promised her mom would always be part of our family, even if she couldn't be here. I promised that our love wouldn't disappear just because the person we loved did. And I promised that no matter what, she could count on me showing up, even if showing up means through a phone screen. Victoria thought about her own childhood, about Harrison Langford's version of parenting, boarding schools and trust funds, and occasional summons to the office for performance reviews disguised as father-daughter time. She'd never known this kind of constancy, this daily choosing to show up. "You're a good father, Mr. Cole." Ethan smiled, but there was sadness in it. "I'm a present father. I'm not sure that's the same thing. I can't give her the life Sarah would have, can't afford the private schools or the summer camps or the things other kids have, but I can give her time and attention and the knowledge that she matters more than anything else in the world. Time and attention are worth more than money." "Are they?" Ethan met her eyes directly. "Because in my experience, Ms. Langford, the people with money never believe that. They talk about quality time and being present, but what they really mean is they'll schedule you in between board meetings and charity galas. I've worked for enough wealthy people to know time is the one thing they never actually give." The criticism was gentle but unmistakable. "Is that what you think I do?" "I think you're here at 7:30 p.m. reviewing maintenance logs when you could be anywhere in the world doing anything you want. So yeah, I think you prioritize work over everything else. But that's your choice to make. You don't have a 7-year-old waiting for a goodnight call." "No," Victoria said quietly. "I don't have anyone waiting." The admission surprised her. She'd never said it out loud before, never acknowledged the emptiness that waited in her penthouse apartment, the silence that greeted her at the end of 16-hour days. Ethan's expression softened. "I didn't mean to overstep." "You didn't. You were honest. I respect honesty." "Even when it's uncomfortable?" "Especially then." Victoria moved toward the door, then paused. "Mr. Cole, would you be willing to attend the quarterly operations meeting next week? I'd like you to present your findings to the executive team, the vendor contracts, the efficiency improvements, all of it." Ethan looked uncertain. "That's not really my place, ma'am. I'm facilities, not executive. And that's exactly why I want you there. Everyone in that room will be selling me something, their vision, their department, their importance. You'll just be telling me the truth about how this building actually runs. That's valuable." "All right, if you think it'll help." "I know it will." Victoria offered him something she rarely gave anyone, a genuine smile. "Go call your daughter, Mr. Cole. Tell her I said the swimming pool cockpit idea shows real innovation." He laughed, and the sound was warm and real. "I'll tell her, though knowing Lily she'll spend all week designing a whole swimming pool spacecraft just to prove it's possible." After he left, Victoria stood in the empty facilities office, surrounded by maintenance schedules and efficiency reports, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Lonely. Not alone. She'd been alone most of her life and had made peace with it. But lonely. Aware of all the goodnight calls she'd never made, all the people who'd never waited for her, all the love she'd traded for power and control. She thought about Harrison Langford, her father, who'd died 3 years ago in this very building, collapsing at his desk during a late-night strategy session. They'd found him the next morning, still in his chair, one hand on his phone, the other on an acquisition contract he'd been reviewing. Alone. Always alone. Victoria had promised herself she'd be different, stronger, better. But standing here now, she wondered if she'd just become a different version of the same thing. Her phone buzzed. Morgan, asking about tomorrow's schedule. Victoria looked at the message, then at the empty office around her, then back at her phone. For the first time in her professional life, she typed something she'd never typed before. "I'll be in at 9 tomorrow. Cancel the early meetings. I need some time." Morgan's response was immediate. "Are you feeling all right?" Victoria smiled at the phone. "I'm working on it." She took the elevator back to her floor, but instead of returning to her office, she went to the executive kitchen and made herself a cup of tea. Then she sat in the lounge area, a space she'd designed but never used, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Ethan Cole was video chatting with his daughter about swimming pool spaceships. Somewhere out there, people were saying goodnight to people who mattered. And here, 63 floors above it all, Victoria Langford sat alone with her tea and her empire, and the growing suspicion that she'd built her entire life on the wrong foundation. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing she'd acknowledged in years. And maybe, just maybe, honesty was where change began. The following Monday, Victoria arrived at the office at 9 a.m. sharp, a time so unprecedented that Morgan actually stood up from her desk when the elevator doors opened. "Miss Langford, I have the revised schedules, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to review the Harrison Memorial Foundation materials first or—" "Coffee," Victoria interrupted gently. "Just bring me coffee, Morgan. Everything else can wait 30 minutes. She settled into her office, a space that usually felt like command central, but today felt almost oppressive in its sterile perfection. Every surface gleamed, every document was precisely aligned. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was personal. Nothing suggested a human being actually worked here. Victoria opened her laptop and pulled up the building's personnel files, scrolling until she found Ethan Cole's record. The photograph showed him looking tired but professional, his expression neutral for the camera. But she could see it now, what she'd missed during her test. The quiet strength in his eyes, the set of his jaw that suggested a man who'd survived things that would have broken someone softer. She clicked through to his employee history. Before Celestial, he'd worked at 3 other restaurants, all entry-level positions. Before that, there was a gap of nearly 2 years. Before that gap, though, the record showed something different. Ethan Cole, associate, Morrison & Drake, architecture firm. Victoria sat back in her chair processing this information. An architect. He'd been an architect. She pulled up Morrison & Drake's website, searching their past projects until she found Ethan's name in the credits for a mixed-use development in Brooklyn that had won a design award 6 years ago. The project was beautiful, innovative use of space, thoughtful integration with the surrounding neighborhood, sustainable materials throughout. Why would someone leave this, she murmured to herself. But she knew. The timeline matched perfectly. His wife's illness. The gap in employment corresponded with her 6-month battle with cancer and the aftermath of her death. He'd walked away from architecture to take care of Lily, to be present in ways that a demanding professional career wouldn't allow. He'd sacrificed everything. Victoria was still staring at the screen when Morgan knocked and entered with coffee. "Ms. Langford, I hate to interrupt, but your father's foundation meeting is in 20 minutes. The board is already gathering in the conference room." Victoria had forgotten completely about the Harrison Langford Memorial Foundation quarterly meeting. Her father had established the foundation to support business education and entrepreneurship, and as his sole heir, Victoria chaired the board. It was a responsibility she took seriously, even if the meetings themselves were often exercises in managed egos and careful politics. "Tell them I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said. The meeting was exactly as tedious as expected. The foundation board consisted of old business associates of her father's, men in their 60s and 70s who spoke and practiced platitudes about legacy and impact, while mostly concerned with maintaining their positions and influence. Victoria guided the discussion through the agenda with efficient precision, approving grants and reviewing financials with half her attention, while the other half kept wandering back to Ethan's employee file. It wasn't until the meeting was nearly over that something caught her attention. And finally, Marcus Pemberton, the foundation's treasurer, was saying, "We have the application from the Roosevelt Elementary After School program. They're requesting funds for a science enrichment program, STEM education, planetarium visits, that sort of thing." "Roosevelt Elementary?" Victoria asked. "Where's that?" "Queens, working-class neighborhood, mostly single-parent households. The school serves a lot of kids whose families can't afford extracurriculars." Pemberton shuffled his papers dismissively. "Honestly, I'm not sure it aligns with our mission. Your father always focused on business education, executive development. Elementary school science projects feel like a departure." Victoria felt something sharp and hot rise in her chest. My father also believed in identifying talent early and giving opportunities to people who wouldn't otherwise have them. Of course, but how much are they requesting? 50,000 for the year, materials, field trips, a part-time instructor. Approved, Victoria said firmly. And I want to report on similar programs in other underserved schools. If this works, we should expand it. The men around the table exchanged glances, clearly surprised by her vehemence. But no one challenged her. They never did. After the meeting ended, Victoria returned to her office and pulled up Roosevelt Elementary's website. It was basic, clearly built on a shoestring budget, but the photos showed bright-eyed children bent over science experiments, their faces lit with curiosity and wonder. She thought about Lily Cole, drawing blueprints for swimming pool spaceships. Then she did something impulsive. She called down to facilities. Ethan answered on the third ring. Building operations, this is Ethan. Mr. Cole, it's Victoria Langford. Do you have a moment? A pause. Of course, Ms. Langford. Is there a problem? No problem. I have a question. Your daughter, Lily, where does she go to school? Another pause, longer this time. Roosevelt Elementary in Queens. Why? Victoria felt a strange flutter in her chest, something that might have been fate or coincidence or just the universe being smaller than she'd realized. The foundation just approved a grant for their science program, $50,000 for STEM education and field trips. You're kidding, Ethan's voice filled with genuine surprise. Lily's been talking about that program for weeks. Her teacher, Ms. Chen, has been trying to get it funded. The kids are so excited about it. Well, now it's happening. They should receive confirmation this week. Miss Langford, I don't know what to say. Lily is going to lose her mind in a good way. I'm glad. Victoria hesitated, then added, I saw in your file that you used to work in architecture, Morrison and Drake. The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. That was a long time ago, Ethan said finally. You worked on the Greenpoint development. I remember when it was completed, the design was innovative. Thank you, but like I said, that was a different life. Why did you leave? She heard him take a breath. When Sarah got sick, I was working 70-hour weeks, trying to make partner, trying to prove myself. I kept telling myself it was for our future, for the life we were building. But then suddenly there was no future, just 6 months of doctors and treatments and hope draining away day by day. And I realized I'd been so focused on building this career that I'd missed being present for the life I already had. So you walked away. So I chose differently. After Sarah died, I needed to be there for Lily. Really there. Not just present in body, but absent in mind. Architecture demands everything from you. I couldn't give it everything and still be the father Lily needed, so I chose her. No regrets? Every single day, Ethan admitted with startling honesty. I regret that I can't give Lily the material things other kids have. I regret that I'm not building things anymore, not creating the way I used to. I regret that my wife died believing I was going to be this successful architect, and instead I'm the guy who fixes broken air conditioners. But then Lily comes home from school and tells me about her day, every detail, every small thing, and I realize she's not regretful. She's happy. She has a dad who knows her favorite color changed from purple to blue last month, who knows she's afraid of dogs but loves cats, who knows exactly how she likes her sandwiches cut. That's worth more than any building I could have designed. Victoria found herself gripping the phone tighter. I think you're wrong about one thing, Mr. Cole. What's that? Your wife didn't die believing you were going to be a successful architect. She died knowing you already were one. You just started designing a different kind of structure. You're building a childhood for your daughter. That's architecture too. The silence that followed was different, softer. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. That means more than you know. After they hung up, Victoria sat at her desk for a long time, staring at nothing. She thought about her own childhood, about Harrison Langford's version of love. He'd given her every material advantage, the best schools, the finest opportunities, the keys to an empire. But he'd never known her favorite color, had never known what she was afraid of, had never known how she liked her sandwiches cut, because they'd never eaten sandwiches together. They'd had catered business lunches where he'd lectured her about quarterly earnings and market positioning. She thought that was normal. That was what successful families looked like. Now she wasn't so sure. That evening, instead of staying late at the office, Victoria left at 6. She told herself she was simply maintaining the schedule adjustment she'd started, but the truth was more complicated. She didn't want to be alone in her office anymore, didn't want to sit in silence while the building emptied around her. She found herself walking through the lobby as the day shift workers were leaving. She'd never paid attention to this exodus before, but now she watched the streams of people heading home. The restaurant staff still in their uniforms, the office workers loosening their ties, the maintenance crew finishing up their tasks. Real people with real lives waiting for them beyond these walls. She saw Ethan across the lobby, standing near the elevator bay with a tall, striking woman who had Lily's hand firmly grasped in hers. The little girl was bouncing on her toes, talking animatedly while Ethan listened with that patient attention that seemed to be his default mode. Victoria found herself walking toward them before she'd consciously decided to do so. "Mr. Cole." Ethan turned, surprised. "Ms. Langford, I wasn't expecting—" He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is my sister, Rachel, and this is Lily." Rachel extended her hand with a warm smile. "The famous Victoria Langford. Ethan's told me about you." "Has he?" Victoria shook her hand, then looked down at Lily, who was staring at her with open curiosity. The girl had her father's dark hair, but her eyes were different, lighter, with flecks of gold that must have come from her mother. She wore a backpack covered in planet stickers and clutched a folder full of papers to her chest. "Are you really the boss of the whole building?" Lily asked. "I am. Even the restaurant, with the fancy lights? Even that." "Wow." Lily considered this seriously. "That's a lot of responsibility. Do you ever get scared you'll mess something up?" Victoria felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. "Every single day." "Me too," Lily confided. "I got picked to present my rocket design to the whole science club next week, and I'm terrified I'll forget everything." "Lily," Rachel said gently, "Ms. Langford is busy." "It's fine," Victoria interrupted. She crouched down to Lily's level, her expensive suit creasing against the lobby floor. "Can I tell you a secret? I present to important people all the time, and I'm always nervous. But I learned a trick." "What trick?" "I remember that the people listening want me to succeed. They're not hoping I'll fail. They're hoping I'll teach them something interesting. So instead of being afraid of messing up, I focus on the one thing I'm excited to share with them." Lily's face brightened. "Like how my rocket has solar panels that fold out like origami?" "Exactly like that. That's interesting. That's something no one else knows until you tell them. Focus on how cool that is, and the nervousness gets smaller." "Did you make that up just now, or is it real?" Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that startled her. "It's real. I promise." "Okay, I'll try it." Lily looked up at her father. "Dad, can I show Ms. Langford my drawings?" "Lily, I'm sure Ms. Langford has important things to do." "I'd love to see them," Victoria said, surprising herself again. Lily pulled out her folder and extracted several papers covered in colored pencil drawings. They were exactly as Ethan had described, wildly impractical, but full of imagination. One showed a rocket with what appeared to be a greenhouse attached. Another featured a spacecraft shaped like a giant cat. "This one's my favorite," Lily said, pointing to a drawing of a rocket with large windows and what looked like a swimming pool. "It's for long trips to Mars. You need somewhere to exercise and relax." "It's brilliant," Victoria said honestly. "You've thought about the human element of space travel, not just the mechanics. That's sophisticated thinking." Lily beamed. "Really?" "Really. Some of the best architects and designers are the ones who remember that buildings and vehicles aren't just structures. They're spaces where people live and work and dream." "Are you an architect?" Lily asked. "No, but I know someone who is." Lily looked up at her father with pure adoration. "My dad used to design buildings. Before I was born. Mom said he was really good at it." Ethan's expression flickered with old pain, but he managed a smile. "Your mom was biased." "No, she wasn't," Lily said firmly. "She showed me pictures. You made a building with a rooftop garden where people could grow vegetables. That's smart." "Your dad is very smart," Victoria agreed, standing up. "And so are you. I expect great things from that rocket presentation." I won't let you down, Lily said with such serious determination that Victoria felt her chest tighten. You couldn't if you tried. As Victoria walked away, she heard Rachel say to Ethan, "She's not what I expected." "No," Ethan replied quietly. "She's not what I expected either." Victoria stepped into her private elevator and watched the lobby disappear as she ascended toward her empty penthouse. But instead of the usual sense of separation, of rising above the mess and noise of other people's lives, she felt something different. She felt like she was missing something important. The next few weeks settled into an unexpected pattern. Victoria found herself leaving the office earlier, timing her departures to coincide with the evening rush when the building emptied. She told herself it was about understanding her employees better, about being a more visible leader. But the truth was that she'd started looking forward to those brief encounters with Ethan, and occasionally with Lily when Rachel brought her by. Sometimes it was just a quick greeting in the lobby. Other times, Ethan would update her on building operations, walking her through improvements he'd implemented or problems he'd solved. He had a gift for explaining complex systems in simple terms, and Victoria found herself genuinely interested in things like HVAC efficiency and elevator maintenance schedules. But it was the conversations that had nothing to do with work that she treasured most. One evening, she found Ethan in the rooftop mechanical room, reviewing some equipment logs. The space offered a spectacular view of the Manhattan skyline through industrial windows, the city glittering in the twilight. "Mr. Cole, I have the quarterly operations meeting materials ready for you to review," she said, approaching with a folder. She'd asked him to present his efficiency findings to the executive team, and the meeting was scheduled for the following week. Ethan took the folder, flipping through it briefly. "This is comprehensive, thank you." "You don't seem nervous." "Should I be?" Most people are terrified of presenting to the executive team. They're not known for being gentle with criticism. Ethan shrugged. "The numbers speak for themselves. Either they care about saving money and running efficiently, or they don't. If they don't, then no amount of smooth presentation will matter anyway." That's a remarkably pragmatic view. It's a remarkably tired view, Ethan corrected with a slight smile. When you've sat in a hospital room watching your wife's life drain away while the machines beep and the nurses whisper and you can't do anything to stop it, executive meetings stop being scary. They're just meetings. Victoria leaned against the window frame, watching the city lights. "How do you do it? Move forward after something like that?" "Who says I've moved forward?" Ethan set the folder down and joined her at the window. "Maybe I've just moved sideways. Different direction, same amount of weight to carry. But you're here. You're working, raising Lily, making improvements to building operations that are genuinely impressive. That's moving forward. That's surviving. There's a difference." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You know what the hardest part is? It's not the big moments. It's not the anniversary of her death or her birthday or our wedding anniversary, though those are brutal. It's the small moments. When Lily does something amazing and my first instinct is to call Sarah and tell her. When I see something funny and want to share it with her. When I'm making dinner and I accidentally cook enough for 3 people instead of 2. Those tiny moments of forgetting and then remembering, they're the ones that break you." "I'm sorry," Victoria said, and meant it deeply. "Don't be. Pain means I loved her. If I wasn't sad, it would mean she didn't matter. I'll take the pain." He glanced at her. "What about you? You ever lose someone important?" Victoria considered the question. "I lost my mother when I was 12. Heart attack, very sudden. My father handled it by throwing himself deeper into work. I followed his example. Did it help? It gave me something to do besides feel. Whether that's the same as helping, I don't know." Ethan nodded slowly. "Your father, Harrison Langford. I read about him when I got hired. Built this empire from nothing, revolutionized commercial real estate development, died at his desk working on a deal." "That's the public version. What's the private version?" Victoria hesitated, surprised by how much she wanted to tell him the truth. "The private version is that he was brilliant and driven and completely incapable of connection. He taught me everything about business and nothing about being human. When my mother died, he told me that grief was a luxury we couldn't afford, that the company needed us focused, so I learned to be focused. I learned to be hard. I learned to win at everything except the things that actually matter." "You think connection matters?" "I think I'm starting to understand that it might." They stood in silence, watching the city breathe below them. Victoria realized this was the most honest conversation she'd had in years, maybe ever. No performance, no strategy, no carefully calculated responses. Just two people being real with each other. "Can I ask you something personal?" Ethan said finally. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Fair enough." He turned to face her directly. "Why did you really give me this job? And don't say it's because you recognized my potential or saw my efficiency reports. You didn't know about any of that when you made the offer." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "Because you asked me to protect your daughter's image of you, even when you thought you were losing everything. And that made me realize how little I understand about love. Real love, the kind that doesn't keep score or calculate returns. I wanted to understand it better. And I thought maybe, if I gave you this opportunity, I could learn something about what it looks like when someone actually cares about something more than themselves." Ethan absorbed this with characteristic quiet. "That's the most honest thing anyone in a position of power has ever said to me." "Is it uncomfortable?" "Terrifying, actually. Because it means you see me as a person instead of an employee, and that's a lot more responsibility." "How so?" "Because employees can keep boundaries. People can't. Once you start actually caring about someone, once you start seeing their humanity, it changes everything. You can't just give orders anymore. You have to consider how those orders affect real lives. It's messier, harder, but worth it." "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. "I've never been in your position, but I know that the best leaders I've ever worked for were the ones who remembered I had a kid at home who asked about her, who understood that my work was important, but it wasn't everything. They were rare, and they were worth following anywhere." Victoria felt something shift in her understanding. "I want to be that kind of leader." "Then you have to be willing to be vulnerable, to admit when you don't know something, to let people matter to you even when it's inefficient or complicated or scary." "That goes against everything my father taught me." "Yeah, well," Ethan smiled slightly, "maybe your father was wrong about some things." The word should have felt like heresy. Harrison Langford had been a titan of industry, a legend. But standing here with Ethan, looking out at the city her father had conquered, Victoria realized that conquering wasn't the same as connecting. Power wasn't the same as purpose. "The quarterly meeting," she said suddenly. "I want you to do something for me." "What's that?" "Don't just present the efficiency numbers. Tell them why it matters. Tell them about the people in this building who work long hours, who have families waiting at home, who deserve a workplace that functions smoothly because it respects their time. Make them see the humans behind the numbers." Ethan studied her carefully. "That's not the kind of presentation executives usually want to hear." "No," Victoria agreed, "but it's the kind they need to hear, and I'm betting you're exactly the person to deliver it." "You're asking me to make them uncomfortable. I'm asking you to make them better. There's a difference." Ethan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "All right, Ms. Langford, I'll do it. But if they hate it, then they hate it. And we'll know we need different executives." "You'd really do that? Shake up your entire leadership team? For the right reasons?" "Yes." Victoria surprised herself with how certain she sounded. "I've spent my entire career protecting the empire my father built. Maybe it's time I started building something different, something that actually matters." "And what matters to you?" Victoria looked at him, this quiet man who'd lost everything and somehow remained kind, who'd sacrificed his dreams for his daughter without becoming bitter, who saw through her walls like they were made of glass. "I'm still figuring that out," she admitted, "but I think it starts with being honest. With myself and with the people around me." "That's a good start." They stood together in the mechanical room, surrounded by the machinery that kept the building running, and Victoria felt more grounded than she had in her executive office 63 floors above. Here, in this functional space with its honest purpose and clear utility, she understood something fundamental. Buildings needed solid foundations, so did people, and she was finally ready to start building hers. The quarterly operations meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. in the main conference room, and by Wednesday evening, Victoria found herself unexpectedly nervous on Ethan's behalf. She'd reviewed his presentation materials 3 times, and they were solid, clear data, concrete recommendations, measurable results. But she knew her executive team, knew how they could tear apart even the most prepared presenter with pointed questions and thinly veiled dismissiveness. She was working late, reviewing contracts, when her phone rang. Ethan's name appeared on the screen. "Mr. Cole, is everything all right? I need a favor." His voice was tight, stressed in a way she'd never heard before. "I know it's late and completely inappropriate to ask, but I don't have anyone else to call." Victoria sat up straighter. "What do you need?" Rachel was supposed to pick up Lily from after-school care, but her car broke down on the highway, and she's stuck waiting for a tow truck. "I can get to Lily, but the program closes at 6:30, and it's already 6:15. Even if I leave right now, I won't make it in time. They charge $50 for every 15 minutes you're late, and after 7, they call child services." "Where's the program?" "Roosevelt Elementary in Queens. I know it's ridiculous to ask, but you're the only other person I know who might be anywhere near." "I'll go," Victoria interrupted. "Text me the address. What does Lily know to look for?" "She knows my car, but Ms. Langford, you can't just—" "Mr. Cole, text me the address and a photo of Lily, then call the school and tell them Victoria Langford is authorized to pick her up. I'll have her call you from my phone as soon as I have her, so you know she's safe." "I don't know what to say." "Say thank you and send me the information. I'm leaving now." Victoria grabbed her coat and purse, bypassing the elevator for the stairs because it would be faster to the parking garage. Her driver, Thomas, was dozing in the town car, but he snapped to attention when she appeared. "Roosevelt Elementary in Queens, as fast as traffic allows." "Yes, ma'am." The drive took 35 minutes through rush hour congestion, and Victoria spent the entire time on her phone coordinating. She called the school directly, speaking with the program director and confirming her authorization to pick up Lily. She checked traffic patterns and optimal routes. She did everything in her power to control a situation that was fundamentally about things she couldn't control. A little girl waiting for someone to show up, trusting that the adults in her life wouldn't let her down. They arrived at 6:48, 13 minutes before the final deadline. Victoria hurried into the building, her heels clicking against linoleum floors covered with children's artwork and motivational posters. The aftercare room was at the end of a hallway painted in cheerful primary colors, and through the door window she could see Lily sitting alone at a table, carefully coloring in a workbook. The program director, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, met Victoria at the door. "Ms. Langford, we spoke on the phone. I'll need to see ID." Victoria showed her driver's license and waited while the woman verified it against whatever list Ethan had provided. The whole time, she kept glancing at Lily, who hadn't looked up from her coloring, seemingly absorbed in getting the details exactly right. "All right, you're cleared. Lily, honey, your dad sent Ms. Langford to pick you up today." Lily's head snapped up, and her face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, recognition, relief, and then uncertainty. "Where's my dad?" Victoria knelt down beside her. "He's stuck at work handling an emergency, and your Aunt Rachel had car trouble. He asked me to come get you, and he's going to call you in just a minute to explain everything. Is that okay?" Lily studied her face carefully. "You came all the way from Manhattan?" "I did." "That's really far." "It is. But your dad needed help, and I was available. So here I am." Victoria held out her phone. "Want to call him? He's probably worried." Lily took the phone with careful hands and pressed the contact Victoria had pulled up. Ethan answered before the first ring finished. "Lily, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad. Ms. Langford is here. She came really fast." Victoria could hear the relief in Ethan's voice, even from a distance. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I tried to get there, but it's okay. You sent help. That's what matters." Lily glanced at Victoria. "Ms. Langford looks really fancy for a school pickup, though, like she's going to a business meeting." Victoria heard Ethan laugh, a sound of pure stress relief. "She probably came straight from work. Listen, Aunt Rachel is getting her car towed to a mechanic, so I asked Ms. Langford if she could bring you to the building. I'll meet you in the lobby in about 40 minutes. Is that all right?" "Sure." "Can we stop for dinner? I'm starving." There was a pause. "Lily, Ms. Langford isn't... She's already doing us a huge favor." "We can stop for dinner," Victoria said loudly enough for Ethan to hear. "Where would you like to go, Lily?" "The taco truck on 42nd Street. They have the best carne asada tacos in the whole city." "Lily, Ethan said, his voice strained. That's not appropriate. Miss Langford doesn't eat at taco trucks. How do you know? Lily challenged. Maybe she loves taco trucks. Victoria took the phone back. Mr. Cole, I'll feed your daughter and deliver her safely to the building. Stop worrying and finish whatever emergency you're handling. We'll be fine. Miss Langford, I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I offered. See you in 90 minutes. She hung up before he could protest further, then looked at Lily, who was watching her with open curiosity. You really want taco truck tacos? They're amazing, Lily said seriously. And Dad only lets me have them on special occasions because they're kind of expensive. But since you're rich, I figured maybe it would be okay. Victoria felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. That's remarkably strategic thinking. I learned it from you. You said to focus on what makes something special and interesting. Taco truck tacos are special and interesting. Fair point. Let's go get some tacos. Thomas looked skeptical when Victoria instructed him to find the taco truck on 42nd Street, but he complied without comment. They found it parked near the theater district, a battered silver truck with hand-painted signs advertising various Mexican specialties. A line of people stretched down the sidewalk, everyone from construction workers to theater actors in costume to business people in suits. Wow, there's a lot of people, Lily observed. Must be really good. They joined the line, and Victoria became acutely aware of how out of place she looked in her tailored Armani suit and Louboutin heels. But Lily seemed completely comfortable, chattering about her day at school, about the rocket presentation she'd given successfully to the science club, about a stray cat she'd seen on the playground. And then Tommy Bradshaw said girls can't be astronauts, which is completely stupid because Sally Ride and Mae Jemison were both astronauts, and they were girls. So I told him he was historically inaccurate, and he got mad and said I was showing off. But Ms. Chen said I was correct, and that standing up for facts isn't showing off. It's being informed. Ms. Chen sounds wise, Victoria said. She's the best teacher ever. She's the one who started the science program, the one your foundation paid for. Lily looked up at her. Dad told me about that. Said you made it happen. So thank you. Because of you, we're going to the planetarium next month and I get to see the Mars exhibit and learn about the rovers. You're welcome. I'm glad the program is meaningful to you. It's meaningful to lots of kids. Not everyone can afford to go to museums and stuff. But now we get to go as a class, all together. That's really cool. They reached the front of the line and Lily ordered with the confidence of a regular customer. 2 carne asada tacos, 1 chicken taco, and a horchata, please. Oh, and what do you want, Ms. Langford? Victoria scanned the handwritten menu board, feeling completely out of her depth. I'll have the same, 2 carne asada tacos and a horchata. The vendor, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands, smiled at them. You two related? I see the same smart eyes. She's my dad's boss, Lily explained. But she came all the way to Queens to pick me up from school because my dad and my aunt both had emergencies. So she's basically a hero. The man's smile widened. A hero boss, that's rare. Food is on me tonight. That's not necessary. Victoria started to protest, but the vendor waved her off. When someone drives across the city to help a kid, that deserves tacos. No arguments. They took their food to a small seating area set up near the truck. Plastic tables and chairs that had seen better days but were clean and functional. Victoria bit into her first taco and was genuinely surprised by how delicious it was. Perfectly seasoned meat, fresh cilantro and onions, a squeeze of lime that brought everything together. This is exceptional, she said. Lily beamed. Told you, Dad says the best food is always where real people eat, not fancy restaurants. He used to take me and Mom to places like this all the time before Mom got sick. You remember going places with your mom? Some things. I remember she always ordered extra guacamole and she loved street music. She'd stop and listen to anyone playing guitar or singing. Dad said she believed in supporting artists. Lily took a sip of her horchata. I don't remember her face as much anymore, though. Sometimes I have to look at pictures to remind myself what she looked like. That makes me feel bad, like I'm forgetting her. Victoria felt her chest tighten. I lost my mother when I was 12. And you know what I learned? You're not forgetting her. You're just making room for new memories alongside the old ones. The love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. Do you still miss your mom? Every single day. But the missing gets different over time. Less sharp, more like an ache. And sometimes, when I do something I know she would have been proud of, I feel like she's still with me in a way. Lily considered this seriously. What kind of things would she be proud of? Honestly, probably moments like this. Sitting at a taco truck with a smart 7-year-old, having a real conversation. My mother believed in connection and being present with people. I spent a long time forgetting that, but I'm trying to remember now. Because of my dad? The question was so direct, so perceptive that Victoria paused mid-bite. What makes you say that? Because you look at him different than other people look at their employees. You look at him like he's interesting, and you came all the way to Queens when he needed help. That's not boss stuff. That's friend stuff. Victoria set down her taco. You're very observant. Dad says I notice things other people miss. He says it's a superpower, but I have to be careful how I use it because sometimes people don't like being noticed. That's true, but the right people appreciate being seen. Victoria met Lily's gaze directly. Your dad is interesting. And yes, I consider him a friend, though I think that might surprise him. I don't have many friends. Why not? Because I spent most of my life thinking friends were a liability, that caring about people made you weak, but I'm learning I was wrong about that. What changed your mind? Your dad. When I tested him by pretending to fire him, he didn't beg for his job or get angry. He just asked me not to let you think he'd failed. That kind of love, putting someone else first even when you're losing everything, that's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. Lily's eyes went wide. You pretended to fire him? That's mean. It was. I thought I was being strategic, but really I was being cruel. I'm trying to be better now. Does Dad know you're trying to be better? I think so. I hope so. Lily finished her last taco and wiped her hands carefully on a napkin. I think you're doing good. The science program and picking me up and buying tacos, those are all good things. Dad always says you can tell what people are really like by what they do when no one's watching, but also by what they do when things are hard. You did good things when things were hard today. So I think you're a good person trying to be better. That's the best kind. Victoria felt emotion rise in her throat, unexpected and overwhelming. Thank you, Lily. That means a lot. You're welcome. Can we get churros for dessert? They got churros, hot and covered in cinnamon sugar, and ate them while walking back to the car. Thomas drove them to the Langford building, and Victoria found herself not wanting the evening to end. There was something refreshing about Lily's directness, her unfiltered observations, her complete lack of pretense. This was what Ethan dealt with every day. This bright, curious, achingly perceptive child who saw through facades and asked uncomfortable questions and somehow made the world feel both more complicated and more simple at the same time. They arrived at the building just as Ethan was rushing out of the elevator into the lobby. He looked stressed and relieved in equal measure, and when he saw Lily, his whole body relaxed. Sweetheart, are you okay? I'm great. We had taco truck tacos and churros, and Ms. Langford told me about her mom, and we talked about how noticing things is a superpower. Lily ran to him and hugged him tightly. You don't have to worry so much, Dad. Ms. Langford is really good at emergencies. Ethan looked at Victoria over his daughter's head, his expression full of things he couldn't say in front of Lily. Thank you. I don't know how to properly thank you, but it was my pleasure, Victoria said honestly. Lily is wonderful company, and the tacos were exceptional. You actually ate taco truck food? Ethan's surprise was almost comical. I did, and it was better than anything I've had at Celestial, though please don't tell the chef I said that. Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. Dad, can Ms. Langford come to my rocket presentation at the planetarium next month, since she paid for the program and everything? Lily, Ms. Langford is very busy. When is it? Victoria interrupted. Third Saturday in November, 2 p.m. Victoria pulled out her phone and checked her calendar. There was a foundation luncheon that day, but it was morning. I'll be there, if you want me there. Lily's face lit up. Really? You'll come? I will. I want to see that swimming pool rocket design in action. After they said goodbye and Victoria headed back to her office, she felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the long day and the unexpected emergency and the growing complexity of her feelings about Ethan and his daughter. She'd spent her entire adult life avoiding exactly this kind of entanglement, the messy, unpredictable reality of caring about people. But sitting at that taco truck, listening to Lily talk about her mother and her dreams and her observations about human nature, Victoria had felt more grounded than she had in years. The quarterly meeting the next afternoon brought her crashing back to her usual reality. The executive team assembled in the main conference room at precisely 2 p.m., 6 vice presidents, 3 senior directors, and the CFO, all of them polished and professional and projecting an air of carefully managed ambition. Victoria had worked with most of them for years, had promoted some of them herself, and knew exactly how ruthless they could be when they sensed weakness. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in a suit that was clearly borrowed and slightly too large, carrying his presentation materials with quiet confidence. Victoria watched the executives assess him with barely concealed condescension. To them, he was nobody. A facilities manager, a former restaurant worker, someone so far below their pay grade that his presence at this meeting was almost insulting. They had no idea what they were about to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, "thank you for making time today. As you know, I've been conducting a comprehensive review of our operations, looking for opportunities to improve efficiency and reduce costs. Mr. Cole has been instrumental in this review, and I've asked him to present his findings. Please give him your full attention." The room settled into the particular kind of silence that meant people were listening but not expecting to be impressed. Ethan stood and connected his laptop to the presentation system. "Good afternoon, I'm Ethan Cole, and I've been working in building operations for the past 6 weeks. Before that, I spent 18 months in the restaurant downstairs, and before that, I was an architect at Morrison & Drake. I mention that background because I want you to understand something fundamental. I've seen this building from every possible angle. From the kitchen where I chopped vegetables for people who never saw me. From the mechanical rooms where I maintain systems that keep you comfortable while you work. And from the outside as someone who designed spaces meant to serve the humans who occupy them." He clicked to the first slide, which showed a simple organizational chart. "We employ 473 people across all Langford building operations. Most of you have never met them. You don't know their names, their stories, or what they sacrifice to keep this place running. And that's normal. You have other responsibilities. But I want to introduce you to someone." The next slide showed a photograph of an older woman in a custodial uniform. This is Maria Gonzalez. She's worked night shift cleaning for Langford Global for 12 years. She has 3 grandchildren and sends money back to family in El Salvador. Maria works from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week, and for the past 6 months she's been getting home an hour later than necessary because of an inefficiency in our cleaning schedules that no one bothered to fix. That's 7 hours a week, nearly 300 hours a year, that Maria loses because we haven't optimized shift coverage. The room had gone very quiet. This was not what they'd expected. Ethan clicked through several more slides, each one showing a different employee with their story and the specific inefficiency that affected their life. The maintenance worker who missed his daughter's school plays because of poor overtime scheduling. The restaurant manager working 60-hour weeks because staffing models hadn't been updated in 5 years. The security guard paying for parking because employee lot assignments were based on seniority rather than shift needs. "I'm not telling you these stories to make you feel bad," Ethan continued. "I'm telling them because every inefficiency in our operations has a human cost. When we overspend on vendor contracts, we're not just wasting money. We're limiting resources that could go to better wages, better benefits, better quality of life for the people who make this company function. And when we don't respect their time, we're sending a message about what we value." He brought up a comprehensive slide showing all his findings: the vendor renegotiations, the scheduling optimizations, the maintenance improvements. The numbers were impressive. Projected savings of over $2 million annually, with efficiency gains that would reduce overtime by 30% and improve employee satisfaction metrics across the board. "Here's my recommendation," Ethan said, his voice steady and clear. "Implement these changes immediately. Reinvest 50% of the savings into employee compensation and benefits. Use the other 50% to fund further operational improvements. And most importantly, commit to regular reviews that include input from employees at every level, not just management." He paused, looking around the room. "Because here's what I've learned working at every level of this organization. The people closest to the work know the problems best. Maria could have told you about the scheduling inefficiency years ago, but no one ever asked her. The maintenance team could have flagged the vendor overcharges, but there was no channel for that feedback. You have brilliant people working for you, people who care about doing their jobs well. Start listening to them. The presentation ended, and silence filled the conference room. Then James Morrison, the CFO and one of Victoria's father's oldest associates, leaned forward. That's a very touching presentation, Mr. Cole. But this company isn't a charity. We're not here to make employees comfortable. We're here to generate returns for our shareholders. I'm not suggesting charity, Ethan replied calmly. I'm suggesting smart business. Employee turnover costs an average of 20% of annual salary to replace and retrain. Every hour of overtime is time and a half we're paying because we're understaffed or poorly scheduled. Every vendor overcharge is money straight out of the bottom line. These recommendations will improve shareholder returns precisely because they improve employee retention and operational efficiency. But reinvesting 50% of savings into compensation? Morrison shook his head. That's giving away our competitive advantage. No, that's creating one, Victoria interjected. Mr. Morrison, when was the last time you reviewed our turnover numbers in facilities and operations? I don't typically concern myself with those departments. Maybe you should. We lose 23% of our workforce annually in those areas. The replacement costs alone exceed $1.4 million. If Mr. Cole's recommendations reduce that turnover by even half, they pay for themselves. She looked around the table. This isn't sentiment, it's strategy, and frankly, it's long overdue. Another executive, Sarah Chen, raised her hand. I actually think Mr. Cole's analysis is brilliant. We've been so focused on big-picture strategy that we've ignored operational fundamentals. These recommendations are actionable, measurable, and financially sound. The meeting dissolved into debate, some executives supporting Ethan's proposals, while others pushed back against changing established systems. Victoria let it play out, watching how people revealed themselves in their arguments. Who cared about numbers versus who cared about people? Who was willing to challenge assumptions versus who protected the status quo? And through it all, Ethan stood quietly at the front of the room, answering questions with patience and data, never defensive, never arrogant. Just clear and honest and unshakable in his conviction that people mattered as much as profits. Finally, Victoria called for a vote. All in favor of implementing Mr. Cole's recommendations in full, including the compensation reinvestment? 7 hands went up, 4 stayed down. Motion carries. Mr. Cole, work with department heads to implement these changes over the next quarter. Report back to me weekly on progress. She looked at the executives who'd voted against. And for those who opposed, I expect your full cooperation nonetheless. This is happening. After the meeting ended and the room cleared, Ethan began packing up his materials. Victoria approached him, aware that they were alone for the first time since she'd picked up Lily the previous evening. That was extraordinary, she said. That was terrifying. Ethan's hands were shaking slightly as he closed his laptop. I've never presented to people like that before. You couldn't tell. You were confident, clear, compelling. I was pretending, channeling what I learned watching Lily give her rocket presentation. Focus on the thing that matters. Make it interesting. Trust that people want to learn something new. Victoria smiled. Your daughter is very wise. She likes you, by the way. Talked about you all night. About the tacos and the conversation and how you told her about your mom. Ethan met her eyes. Thank you for that, for being real with her. She doesn't get a lot of that from adults outside family. I enjoyed it. She's remarkable. You've raised someone special. I'm trying. Some days I feel like I'm succeeding. Other days I feel like I'm just barely keeping us both afloat. The fact that you care enough to worry about it means you're succeeding. They stood in the empty conference room, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, and Victoria felt the air between them change. It wasn't professional anymore. Wasn't boss and employee. It was something else, something more complicated and more honest. Ms. Langford. Victoria. When we're alone, please call me Victoria. Ethan absorbed this, the shift in dynamic it represented. Victoria. I need to be clear about something. What you did yesterday, picking up Lily, that went way beyond your job description or any reasonable expectation. You drove to Queens, waited at an elementary school, bought tacos from a food truck, and spent 2 hours with my kid. That's not normal boss behavior. I know. So what is it? Victoria took a breath, deciding to be as honest as he'd been with the executives. It's me trying to be less alone, trying to understand what it looks like when people actually care about each other without an agenda. You and Lily, you're teaching me things I never learned. And yes, that makes our professional relationship complicated. But I'd rather have complicated and real than simple and empty. That's not an answer. That's a deflection wrapped in honesty. You're right. Victoria moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gray at his temples, the lines around his eyes from years of worry and laughter. The truth is, I don't know what this is. I don't have a framework for it, but I know that when your daughter needed help, dropping everything to drive to Queens wasn't a decision I had to think about. It was just what you do for people who matter, and somewhere along the way, you started to matter. Ethan was quiet for a long time. I have a 7-year-old daughter who's been through enough loss. I won't introduce complexity into her life unless I'm certain it's worth it. I understand. Do you? Because from where I stand, you're a billionaire CEO, and I'm the guy who fixes air conditioners. You live in a penthouse, and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens where Lily sleeps in the only bedroom, and I sleep on a pull-out couch. Our worlds don't overlap except in this building, where you have all the power and I have none. Then let's change that, Victoria said. Let's find places where our worlds can overlap on equal ground. No building, no hierarchy, no power dynamics. Just two people figuring out if they might become friends. Friends. It's a start, isn't it? Ethan studied her face, and Victoria had the sense of being truly evaluated, her worth measured by something other than net worth, or position, or influence. All right, he said finally. Friends. But I have 2 conditions. Name them. First, if this friendship affects Lily in any way that makes her uncomfortable or confused, we stop. Her stability comes first, always. Agreed. And second, you actually have to be a friend. Show up. Be present. Don't disappear into your work for months and then act surprised when I've moved on. I've lost too many people to invest in relationships that aren't real. The words hit harder than he probably intended, a glimpse of pain beneath his steady exterior. I'll show up, Victoria promised. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I'll try. That's all I can offer. That's all anyone can offer. Ethan picked up his laptop case and headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Victoria, I think you're already doing better than you realize. The science program, the operational changes, picking up Lily, this whole conversation, that's showing up. That's trying. Don't discount that. After he left, Victoria stood alone in the conference room, watching the city transition from afternoon to evening beyond the windows. She'd built an empire on certainty, on control, on knowing exactly what every decision would yield. But this friendship, this connection, this slow unraveling of her carefully constructed walls, this was uncertain territory, dangerous in its unpredictability. But standing here now, Victoria realized that the most important things in life probably couldn't be controlled or calculated or guaranteed. They could only be chosen, day after day, moment by moment. And she was choosing this, whatever this became. The following weeks unfolded with a rhythm Victoria had never experienced before. She maintained her demanding schedule, board meetings, investor calls, strategic planning sessions, but she also carved out spaces for something entirely new. Lunch on Tuesdays with Ethan in the building cafeteria, where they sat among other employees and talked about everything from building operations to Lily's latest school projects. Coffee on Thursday mornings before the workday officially began, sitting in the executive lounge and discussing the implementation of his operational changes. It was friendship in its simplest form, and Victoria found herself looking forward to these moments more than she looked forward to closing multi-million-dollar deals. But it was the evening 3 weeks after the quarterly meeting that changed everything. Victoria was working late, reviewing proposals for a new development project, when her phone rang. Ethan's name appeared, and she answered immediately, smiling. Calling to cancel Thursday coffee? I thought we had a standing appointment. Victoria. His voice was wrong, tight with barely controlled panic. I need help. Lily's sick. Really sick. Fever of 104, she's not making sense, and I can't get her temperature down. Rachel's out of town and I don't know anyone else to call and the pediatrician's office is closed and where are you? Victoria was already grabbing her coat. Home. Our apartment in Queens, but you don't need to… Text me the address. I'm leaving now. Victoria, it's almost 8 p.m. and… Ethan. She cut him off, her voice firm but gentle. Text me the address. I'm already in the elevator. The drive to Queens took 40 minutes through evening traffic, and Victoria spent the entire time on the phone with her personal physician, Dr. Sarah Matthews, explaining Lily's symptoms and getting guidance on what to watch for and when to go to the emergency room. High fever in children can be serious, but it's usually viral, Dr. Matthews said calmly. The key things to monitor are her level of consciousness, any difficulty breathing, severe headache, or stiff neck. If she has any of those, go to the ER immediately. Otherwise, focus on keeping her hydrated and bringing the fever down with lukewarm baths and medication. What if she needs to be seen tonight? I can meet you at Mount Sinai if necessary. Just call me back if the situation changes. Victoria hung up and immediately called Ethan back. Dr. Matthews says we watch for specific warning signs. Is Lily responsive? Can you wake her up and talk to her? Yeah, she's awake, crying actually. Says her head hurts and she's cold even though she's burning up. That's the fever. It makes you feel cold. Keep her comfortable. I'm 20 minutes away. The address led to a modest apartment building in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place Victoria had never had reason to visit. She found visitor parking and hurried inside, taking the stairs to the third floor because waiting for the elevator felt impossible. Ethan opened the door before she could knock, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a helplessness in his eyes that made Victoria's chest ache. She's in the bedroom, he said, his voice cracking. I've tried everything, medicine, cool cloths, nothing's working, and I keep thinking about Sarah, about how she got sick and we couldn't fix it, and… Victoria took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Lily is not Sarah. This is a fever, probably a virus. Children get them all the time. We're going to handle this together, okay? But I need you to breathe and focus because Lily needs you calm. Ethan took a shaky breath, nodding. Okay. She's this way. The apartment was small but immaculately clean, furnished simply with second-hand pieces that had been carefully maintained. Photos covered the walls. Lily as a baby. Lily with a woman who must have been Sarah, the three of them as a family before illness stole that future away. Victoria took it all in quickly, this glimpse into Ethan's private world, before following him to the bedroom. Lily was curled under blankets, her face flushed with fever, her hair damp with sweat. She looked so small and fragile, nothing like the confident child who'd talked about swimming pool spaceships. Lily, sweetheart, Ms. Langford is here, Ethan said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. You came? Of course I came. Victoria sat on the other side of the bed, gently brushing hair away from Lily's forehead. She was burning up. Your dad said you weren't feeling well, so I thought I'd visit. Do you think you could drink some water for me? My head hurts. I know, honey, but water will help. Just a few sips. Ethan helped Lily sit up while Victoria held the water glass, coaxing her to drink. The little girl managed a few swallows before lying back down, exhausted from even that small effort. When did the fever start? Victoria asked Ethan quietly. She complained about feeling tired when I picked her up from school. By dinner, she had no appetite, and by 7 her temperature was 103. I gave her children's ibuprofen, but it barely touched it. Victoria checked her watch. That was an hour ago. It takes time to work. Let's give it another 30 minutes. In the meantime, we need to cool her down gradually. Dr. Matthews suggested a lukewarm bath. I tried that. She screamed that it was too cold. I know, but we need to try again. Her temperature is too high. They worked together, Ethan filling the bathtub with lukewarm water while Victoria helped Lily out of her sweat-soaked pajamas. The little girl cried weakly through the whole process, saying she was freezing, begging them to stop. It was heartbreaking, and Victoria could see Ethan struggling to maintain his composure. You're doing great, sweetheart, Victoria murmured, supporting Lily in the water while Ethan gently sponged her arms and back. I know it feels terrible right now, but we're helping your body fight off whatever bug made you sick. You're so brave." "I don't feel brave," Lily whispered. "I feel scared." "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Brave means doing the hard thing even when you're scared. And you're doing it." After 10 minutes in the bath, they got Lily into fresh pajamas and back to bed. Victoria checked her temperature again, 103.2. Better, but still too high. "We'll check again in 30 minutes, Victoria said. Victoria Sumites. "If it's not coming down or if she develops any of the warning signs Dr. Matthews mentioned, we go to the hospital." Ethan nodded, sitting heavily in the chair beside Lily's bed. He looked exhausted, wrung out from fear and helplessness. Victoria understood then what he'd meant about Sarah's illness, about watching someone you love suffer and being unable to fix it. This was his nightmare made real, his daughter sick, possibly getting worse, and him powerless to stop it. "I'm going to make some tea," Victoria said. "You stay with her. I'll be right back." The apartment's kitchen was tiny but organized, everything in its place. Victoria found the kettle and tea bags, moving quietly while the water heated. Through the doorway, she could see Ethan holding Lily's hand, murmuring soft reassurances, his whole body tense with vigilance. When the tea was ready, Victoria brought 2 cups back to the bedroom. She handed one to Ethan, then settled into the small chair in the corner, claiming the vigil with him. "You don't have to stay," Ethan said quietly. "You've already done so much." "I'm not leaving." Victoria's voice was firm. "Not until we know she's okay." "Victoria, it could be hours. All night even." "Then I'll be here all night." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you called me. Because Lily is sick and you're terrified and I can help. Because this is what friends do." "This is more than friendship." "Is it?" Victoria met his gaze steadily. "Because from where I sit, this is exactly what friendship looks like. Being there when it matters. When things are hard and scary and there's no professional benefit, no strategic advantage, just another human being who needs you to show up." Ethan's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't know how to accept this kind of help. How to let someone care without feeling like I owe them something. You don't owe me anything. This isn't a transaction. It's just..." Victoria paused, searching for the right words. "It's just me choosing to be here. Choosing you and Lily, that's all." They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea and watching Lily sleep restlessly. Every few minutes, Ethan would check her forehead, adjust her blankets, make sure she was still breathing normally. The attention was constant, unwavering, the vigil of a parent who'd already lost too much. At 9:30, Victoria checked Lily's temperature again, 102.4. Still high, but moving in the right direction. "The medicine is working," she said with relief. "We're not out of the woods yet, but this is good." Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding. "Thank you. For being calm, for knowing what to do, for..." His voice broke. "For being here. Where else would I be? In your penthouse, at your office. Anywhere but a cramped apartment in Queens dealing with a sick kid who isn't even yours." Victoria set down the thermometer and moved to sit on the edge of Lily's bed. "Can I tell you something? The penthouse is beautiful and empty. The office is powerful and lonely. And this, sitting here with you and Lily, drinking bad tea and monitoring temperatures, this is the most real I've felt in years, maybe ever. That's the fear talking. When the crisis passes, you'll remember you have a life that doesn't include sick kids and middle-of-the-night emergencies." "You're wrong." Victoria surprised herself with how certain she sounded. "I've spent my entire adult life building walls, convincing myself that distance was safety, that if I didn't let anyone matter, I couldn't be hurt. And it worked, in a way. I built an empire. I became powerful and successful and completely alone. Then you walked into my office and asked me not to let your daughter think you'd failed, and something I'd buried so deep started to crack open. This isn't fear or adrenaline or some temporary deviation from my real life. This is me finally understanding what my real life should have been all along." Ethan stared at her, his expression raw and vulnerable. "Victoria, I can't. If you're going to be part of our lives, part of Lily's life, I need to know you're serious. That this isn't some experiment in being human that you'll abandon when it gets inconvenient or boring or too complicated. I'm serious. How can you be sure? Because I drove to Queens in the middle of the night without hesitation. Because when you called, my first thought wasn't about work or obligations or anything except getting here to help. Because Lily matters to me. You matter to me. And I finally understand that mattering to someone, having them matter to you, that's not weakness. It's the whole point. Lily stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about rockets. Both Victoria and Ethan immediately turned their attention to her, checking her face, her breathing, the way she settled back into deeper rest. She's okay, Ethan said softly, more to himself than to Victoria. She's going to be okay. She is. Kids are resilient. She'll probably wake up tomorrow with a lower fever and be demanding pancakes by noon. She does love pancakes. Ethan managed a small smile. Chocolate chip, extra syrup, cut into specific shapes depending on her mood. Last week she only wanted star-shaped pancakes because we'd been reading about constellations. You cut pancakes into star shapes? I do a lot of things I never imagined doing before Lily. You become a different person when you are responsible for someone else's entire world. Victoria thought about her own father, about the person he'd been, and the parent he'd failed to become. Harrison never cut my pancakes into shapes. I'm not sure he ever made me pancakes at all. We had a chef and meals were scheduled and formal even when I was Lily's age. That sounds lonely. It was. I just didn't realize it until recently. Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Queens neighborhood with its modest buildings and lived-in streets. You know what Lily said to me at the taco truck? She said I was a good person trying to be better, and that was the best kind. No one's ever said anything like that to me before. She has good instincts about people. She gets that from you. The way you see people, really see them. That's rare. Most people in my world only see what I can do for them or what they can get from me. But you and Lily, you see me, just me, without the empire or the money or the power. That's terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Ethan joined her at the window, standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For what it's worth, what we see is someone trying really hard to figure out how to be human in a world that taught you to be a machine, and succeeding more than you probably realize. I don't feel like I'm succeeding. You're here, aren't you? You left your office, drove across the city, talked to your personal physician, helped give my daughter a bath, and now you're standing vigil at midnight on a Thursday. If that's not succeeding at being human, I don't know what is. They stood together in the quiet apartment, watching the city lights beyond the window, and Victoria felt something settle deep in her chest. A rightness, a sense of being exactly where she was supposed to be. At 11 p.m., Lily's temperature was down to 101. At midnight, it was 100.3. By 1 a.m., it had stabilized at 99.8, and Lily was sleeping peacefully, her breathing even and her color better. We should both get some rest, Victoria said. She's out of danger. I can't sleep yet, too wound up. Then we'll stay awake together. I'll make more tea. They moved to the living room, leaving Lily's door open so they could hear if she woke. The apartment's main space was small but comfortable. A worn couch facing a modest TV, bookshelves crammed with architecture books and children's stories, a small desk in the corner covered with Lily's drawings and school papers. Victoria sat on the couch while Ethan made fresh tea, studying the photos on the walls. There was one of Sarah that caught her attention, a woman with warm eyes and an open smile, holding infant Lily and looking at the camera with pure joy. She'd been beautiful in an unguarded way, someone who'd clearly loved deeply and without reservation. That's my favorite picture of her, Ethan said, handing Victoria a mug and settling beside her. Lily was 3 months old. Sarah had been up all night with her, exhausted beyond reason, but when I took that photo, she just smiled like everything was perfect. That's who she was. Someone who found joy even in the hard moments. You must miss her terribly. Every day. But differently now than at first. At first it was this huge consuming grief that colored everything. Now it's more like a permanent ache, always there but manageable. I can think about her and smile instead of just feeling the loss. Lily keeps her present in your lives. We talk about her mom all the time. I want Lily to know her even if she can't remember her clearly. So we tell stories, we look at photos, we celebrate Sarah's birthday every year. She's still part of our family, just in a different way. Victoria sipped her tea, processing the grace of this approach. My father never talked about my mother after she died. It was like she'd never existed. All her photos came down, her belongings disappeared. Her name became something we didn't mention. I think he thought he was protecting me, but really he was erasing her. That must have been painful. It was lonely. I couldn't grieve because there was nothing to grieve. She just vanished from our lives like she'd been a dream. Sometimes I wonder if that's why I'm so bad at connection. I never learned how to hold on to people, how to keep them present even when they're gone. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I tell you something? You're not bad at connection. You're just inexperienced. There's a difference. Bad at it would be not trying, not caring, not showing up. But you're doing all those things. You're here at 1:30 in the morning, drinking tea in my living room after spending hours helping with my sick daughter. That's not someone who's bad at connection. That's someone who's learning how and doing pretty well at it." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them back, but Ethan noticed. "Hey," he said softly, "it's okay to cry. You don't have to be strong all the time." "I don't cry. I haven't cried in, I can't even remember the last time." "Why not?" "Because Harrison taught me that tears are weakness, that showing emotion is vulnerability, and vulnerability is how people hurt you. Your father was wrong about a lot of things." The words, said so simply and with such conviction, broke something open inside Victoria. The tears came then, silent and steady, running down her face while she sat frozen, unsure what to do with this loss of control. Ethan didn't speak. He just shifted closer and put his arm around her shoulders, offering comfort without demanding anything in return. And Victoria, who'd spent decades building walls against exactly this kind of vulnerability, let herself lean into him, let herself be held, let herself cry for all the years she'd spent alone, for the mother she'd lost and never properly grieved, for the father who'd taught her everything except how to be human. They sat like that for a long time, Victoria crying quietly while Ethan simply held her, his presence steady and grounding. When the tears finally stopped, she felt exhausted and raw, and somehow lighter than she had in years. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice rough. "That was unprofessional." "We're not at work. We're in my living room in the middle of the night. Professional doesn't apply here." "Still, I don't usually fall apart like that." "Maybe you should more often. Holding everything inside doesn't make you strong, Victoria. It just makes you alone." She knew he was right, knew that her entire approach to life had been built on faulty assumptions about what strength meant, what success required, what happiness looked like. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd achieved, none of it mattered as much as sitting here on this second-hand couch with a man who saw her, really saw her, and didn't turn away from what he found. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, "how to be the person I want to be, how to unlearn 38 years of emotional isolation." "You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep trying." Ethan's arm was still around her shoulders, warm and solid. "And you don't have to do it alone. That's what connection means. You let people help you figure it out. Even when it's messy and difficult and I'm probably going to mess it up repeatedly?" Especially then. Lily didn't learn to walk by getting it right the first time. She fell down constantly, got frustrated, cried about it, but she kept trying because she wanted to move forward more than she wanted to stay safe on the ground. Same principle applies to emotional growth. Victoria let herself rest against him, too tired to maintain defenses. "How did you get so wise about all this?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who lost everything that mattered and had to rebuild from scratch." You learn a lot when you have no choice but to figure out what actually matters versus what you just thought mattered. They talked quietly for another hour, about everything and nothing. About Lily's latest school project and Victoria's memories of her mother. About Ethan's abandoned architecture career and Victoria's regrets about the foundation she'd let become a memorial to her father's ego instead of a genuine force for good. About how strange and terrifying and wonderful it was to let someone see you completely, without armor or pretense. At 3 a.m., Ethan checked on Lily again. Her temperature was 99.1, still slightly elevated but nearly normal. Her sleep was peaceful, and when Ethan gently touched her forehead, she barely stirred. She's really okay, he said with profound relief. Thank you, Victoria, for everything. For coming. For staying. For helping me not lose my mind. You wouldn't have lost your mind. You would have handled it like you handle everything, with love and competence and quiet strength. I wouldn't have handled it alone nearly as well as I handled it with you here. The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither of them was quite ready to name. Victoria saw the exact moment Ethan realized what he'd said, saw him start to backtrack, to minimize or explain away the intimacy of the admission. She didn't let him. I'm glad I was here, she said clearly. I'm glad you called me. I'm glad we're doing this, whatever this is. Ethan studied her face, searching for something. What is this, Victoria? Because it stopped feeling like just friendship somewhere around the time you drove to Queens in the middle of the night to help with my daughter's fever. Wait, I don't know what to call it. I just know that when you called, I didn't think about whether it was appropriate or professional or what the implications might be. I just thought about getting to you and Lily, about being where you needed me to be. That scares me, Ethan admitted, because Lily's already attached to you. She talks about you constantly, asks when she'll see you again, draws pictures of the three of us together like we're— He stopped abruptly. Like we're what? Like we're family, and I don't know how to tell her that's not what this is without breaking her heart. But I also don't know how to tell her it might be what this is without setting her up for another loss if I'm wrong. Victoria's heart hammered in her chest. What if you're not wrong? What if I am? What if this is just you trying on a different life for a while, seeing what it feels like to be with real people with real problems, and then you go back to your penthouse and your empire and realize you don't actually want this kind of complicated, messy reality? I'm here at 3 a.m, sitting in your apartment after helping you care for your sick daughter. Does that feel like I'm trying on a different life temporarily? It feels like you're being a good friend. It doesn't necessarily mean you want more than that. Do you want more than that? The question was direct, unambiguous, and Ethan looked stunned that she'd asked it so plainly. Victoria, I need you to be honest with me, Ethan. Do you want this to be more than friendship? Because I do. I want to be part of your life and Lily's life, not as your boss or as some charitable presence, but as someone who cares about you both deeply and wants to build something real. But I need to know if that's even a possibility before I invest more of my heart in this. Ethan stood and walked to the window, his back to her, his shoulders tense. When he spoke, his voice was low and raw. I haven't let myself think about being with anyone since Sarah died. It felt like a betrayal, like I'd be replacing her. But lately, when I'm with you, I forget to feel guilty about being happy. And that terrifies me because it means I'm moving forward, really forward, into a future that doesn't include her. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. Victoria joined him at the window, standing beside him but not touching. Sarah wouldn't want you to be alone forever, would she? No, she made me promise, actually. In those last weeks, when we both knew she wasn't going to make it, she made me promise I'd let myself love again, that I'd give Lily a chance at having a complete family. I promised because she needed to hear it, but I never thought I'd actually want to keep that promise. Until now. Until you. Ethan finally turned to face her. Until this brilliant, complicated woman walked into my life and saw me, not just as the employee or a father or a widower, but as a person, someone worth knowing, worth caring about, worth driving to Queens for at midnight. And now I'm standing here realizing I'm falling for you, and I have absolutely no idea how to make that work with the reality of our lives. Victoria's breath caught. She'd hoped, suspected maybe, but hearing him say it made it real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. We figure it out together, she said. We take it slow, we prioritize Lily. We don't make promises we can't keep. But we try. We see if this connection we found can become something more. And if it doesn't work, we handle it with honesty and kindness because we matter to each other, regardless of whether this becomes romantic. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's probably the most complicated thing either of us has ever attempted, but I think it might be worth it. Ethan reached out and took her hand, his fingers rough and warm against hers. I think it might be too. They stood at the window as the city began its slow transition from night to dawn, holding hands and acknowledging what they'd both been dancing around for weeks. It wasn't a declaration of love or a commitment to forever. It was just two people admitting they wanted to try, wanted to see if the connection between them could grow into something lasting. In the bedroom, Lily stirred and called out softly, "Dad?" Ethan squeezed Victoria's hand once before releasing it and heading to his daughter. Victoria followed, watching from the doorway as he sat on Lily's bed and brushed hair from her forehead. "Hey, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Tired and thirsty. Is Ms. Langford still here?" "I'm here," Victoria said, entering the room. "Do you want some water?" Lily nodded, managing a small smile. "You stayed all night?" "I did. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "That's really nice, thank you." Victoria brought water and helped Lily sit up to drink while Ethan checked her temperature. 98.9. Essentially normal. "Looks like you beat whatever bug you had," Ethan said with obvious relief. "How does your head feel?" "Better? Still a little achy, but not terrible." Lily looked between her father and Victoria, her perceptive gaze missing nothing. "You both look really tired." "We were worried about you," Victoria admitted. "But you're okay now, so that's what matters." "Were you here the whole time? Both of you?" "Yes." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she said, "Dad, does this mean Ms. Langford is more than just your friend?" Ethan shot Victoria a panicked look, clearly unprepared for such a direct question. Victoria knelt beside the bed, meeting Lily's eyes. "Your dad and I care about each other very much, and I care about you very much. We're still figuring out exactly what that means, but whatever happens, you'll always know the truth, okay? We won't hide things from you or pretend something is different than it is. So you might become like my dad's girlfriend. Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Lily considered this seriously. "I think so. You're nice, and you came when we needed help, and you don't treat me like I'm stupid just because I'm 7. But I need to make sure of something first." "What's that?" "If you're with my dad, you can't leave. Not like how my mom left. I know that wasn't her choice, but still, you can't decide one day that you don't want to be part of our family anymore. Because that would make my dad really sad, and it would make me really sad too. So if you're not sure you want to stay, it's better to just be friends and not promise something you might not keep." The words, delivered with such solemn wisdom from a 7-year-old, made Victoria's chest ache. "That's a very fair requirement, and I promise you, Lily, I will never make a commitment to you or your dad unless I'm certain I can keep it. Right now, we're taking things slowly, figuring out how to be in each other's lives. But if that changes, if we decide to become a real family, you'll know that I'm all in, that I chose you both, and I'm staying." "Okay, that's good." Lily yawned hugely. "I'm really tired. Can I go back to sleep?" "Of course." Ethan helped her settle back into the pillows. "Rest as long as you need to. I'll be right here. Miss Langford too?" Victoria glanced at Ethan, who nodded slightly. "I'll be here too, for as long as you want me to be." Lily smiled and closed her eyes, asleep again within minutes. In the living room, Victoria and Ethan collapsed onto the couch, exhausted from the long night and the emotional intensity of everything that had been said. "Well," Ethan said after a long silence, "that went better than I expected. She's remarkable. The way she articulated her needs, set clear boundaries, most adults can't do that effectively. She's had to grow up faster than she should have. Loss does that. She's also had you teaching her that her feelings matter, that she's allowed to ask for what she needs. That's remarkable parenting." Ethan leaned back against the couch, closing his eyes. "I'm trying. Some days I feel like I'm succeeding. Other days I feel like I'm just improvising wildly and hoping for the best. Welcome to being human. We're all just improvising." They sat together as dawn broke fully over Queens, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Victoria knew she should go home, shower, change, prepare for the workday ahead. But leaving felt wrong somehow, like walking away from something important before it had fully formed. "Stay for breakfast," Ethan said quietly. "It's Friday. You can go in late. And besides, if Lily wakes up and you're gone, she'll be disappointed." "Just Lily?" "No, not just Lily." Victoria smiled and settled deeper into the couch. Then I'll stay, but I'm making breakfast. You've been up all night and you need rest. You've been up all night too. Yes, but I'm running on adrenaline and the novelty of having someone to cook for. Let me do this. She found ingredients for pancakes in the small kitchen: flour, eggs, milk, chocolate chips. And when Lily woke up 2 hours later, her fever completely gone and her energy returning, she found her father asleep on the couch and Victoria in the kitchen making star-shaped chocolate chip pancakes. You learned how to make them the right shape? Lily asked, delighted. I watched a video on my phone. I may have made several practice ones first that turned out more like blobs than stars, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. Lily climbed onto a kitchen stool, watching Victoria work. Are you going to be around more now? Like coming over and stuff? Would you like that? Yeah, I think so. Dad's been less sad since he started working with you. And you're interesting. Most adults are boring, but you actually listen when I talk and you remember things I tell you. That's because what you say is worth remembering. They ate pancakes together when Ethan woke up. The three of them crowded around the small kitchen table, and Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this content. There was no performance here, no strategic thinking required, just the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people who mattered. Her phone buzzed with messages from the office, meetings she was missing, decisions that needed her input, a dozen small crises that felt utterly unimportant compared to where she was right now. She silenced the phone and focused on Lily explaining her rocket design in elaborate detail, on Ethan's quiet smile as he watched them interact, on the feeling of being exactly where she belonged. The Empire could wait. This was what mattered. Victoria finally left Ethan's apartment at noon, promising Lily she'd see her at the planetarium presentation the following month and extracting a promise from Ethan that he'd call if Lily's fever returned. The drive back to Manhattan felt surreal, the city somehow brighter and more alive than it had seemed just hours before. She went straight to her penthouse to shower and change, catching her reflection in the mirror and barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her hair was disheveled, her expensive suit rumpled beyond saving, and there were dark circles under her eyes from the sleepless night. But there was something else, too. A lightness in her expression, a softness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked happy. By the time Victoria arrived at the office at 2 p.m., Morgan was hovering anxiously with a stack of messages and a concerned expression. Ms. Langford, are you all right? You've never missed morning meetings before. I was starting to worry something had happened. Something did happen, Victoria said, taking the messages and flipping through them absently. But it was something good. Reschedule whatever I missed for early next week and clear my calendar for the third Saturday in November, 2 p.m. May I ask what for? A rocket presentation at Roosevelt Elementary. It's important. Morgan blinked, clearly trying to process this information. Of course. I'll make sure you're free. The next few weeks settled into a new pattern, one that felt both foreign and increasingly natural. Victoria maintained her professional responsibilities, but she also carved out time for dinner with Ethan and Lily on Tuesday evenings, for Saturday morning trips to the park, or the library, or wherever Lily wanted to explore. She learned the rhythms of their small family, the way Ethan always made Lily's lunch the night before because mornings were chaotic, the way Lily insisted on reading one chapter of her current book aloud every night, the way they held hands and set a quiet moment of remembrance for Sarah before every meal. She wasn't trying to replace Sarah. That would have been impossible and wrong. But she was finding her own place in their lives, and they were finding a place in hers. It was 6 weeks after the fever scare when everything changed again. Victoria was in her office reviewing quarterly reports when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. Victoria Langford. Ms. Langford, this is Marcus Chen from the Manhattan Business Journal. I'm working on a story about Langford Global's recent operational changes and their impact on employees. I was hoping to get a statement from you. Victoria's guard went up immediately. What kind of story? We've received information from a source within your company suggesting that your facilities manager, Ethan Cole, has received preferential treatment and compensation increases that far exceed standard promotions. There are also allegations of a personal relationship between you and Mr. Cole that may constitute a conflict of interest. I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond before we publish. Victoria's blood ran cold. Who is your source? I can't reveal that, but they provided detailed documentation including payroll records and email correspondence. The story runs tomorrow unless you'd like to provide comment. Give me 2 hours. I'll call you back. She hung up and immediately called her head of HR and her legal counsel, demanding they meet in her office within 15 minutes. Then she called Ethan. We have a problem. Can you come to my office right now? He was there in 5 minutes, looking worried. Victoria dismissed her assistant and closed the door. Someone leaked information about your promotion and compensation to the Manhattan Business Journal. They're running a story tomorrow suggesting you received preferential treatment because of our personal relationship. Ethan's face went pale. Our personal relationship that didn't exist when I got promoted. I know that. You know that. But the optics are terrible. You're a facilities manager who went from chopping vegetables to a $50,000 salary increase in 6 weeks, and we've been seen together outside the office, with Lily acting like a family, Ethan finished quietly, which is what we're becoming. Yes, but the media won't care about the truth. They'll care about the story. Billionaire CEO gives massive promotion to man she's romantically involved with. That's a scandal. That's corruption. That undermines everything I've been trying to build here. Victoria's legal counsel, Patricia Wu, arrived with the HR director, James Morrison. Patricia laid out the situation with clinical precision. The leak appears to have come from someone with access to confidential HR files. We're investigating internally, but the immediate concern is managing the story. The Journal is running it tomorrow regardless of whether you comment. Our options are to get ahead of it with a statement, to deny the relationship entirely, or to provide documentation showing Mr. Cole's promotion was merit-based. It was merit-based, Victoria said firmly. He saved us $2 million in operational costs. That justifies the promotion and the compensation. The timing is the problem, James said carefully. Mr. Cole was promoted 3 weeks after you conducted your unusual hiring test with him. The perception will be that you created a position for him as a reward for... He paused delicately. For what? Ethan's voice was sharp. For being a good father? For asking her not to tell my daughter I'd failed? That's what happened in that office. Nothing inappropriate, nothing romantic, just a conversation that made Ms. Langford rethink how she evaluated people. I believe you, Patricia said, but belief and optics are different things. The board is going to have questions. The shareholders are going to have questions. And if this story gains traction, it could impact the company's reputation and stock price. Victoria stood and walked to her windows, looking out at the city she'd conquered but never really seen until Ethan had taught her to look differently. She thought about everything she'd built, the empire, the reputation, the carefully constructed image of the Ice Queen CEO who cared only about profits and power. And she thought about Lily's face when Victoria had made star-shaped pancakes, about Ethan's hand in hers during those long hours when his daughter was sick, about finally understanding what it meant to matter to someone and have them matter to you. She turned back to face the room. We tell the truth. All of it. Victoria, Patricia warned, that's risky. Admitting to a personal relationship, I'm not admitting to anything inappropriate because nothing inappropriate has occurred. Ethan received his promotion based purely on merit, and we have documentation to prove it. The personal relationship developed afterwards, slowly and appropriately, with full awareness of the complexities involved. We're not hiding. We're not apologizing. We're being honest. Ethan stood. Victoria, I can resign. That would solve the problem. No conflict of interest if I'm not your employee. No. Victoria's voice was firm. You earned your position. You've done exceptional work. I'm not asking you to sacrifice your career because some board members are uncomfortable with the fact that I have a personal life. This isn't about board members being uncomfortable, James said carefully. This is about company policy. We have strict rules about relationships between supervisors and subordinates precisely to avoid these situations. Then we change the policy, Victoria said. Or we restructure so Ethan reports to someone other than me. Or we create an independent review process to ensure all his evaluations and compensation decisions are merit-based. But we don't hide and we don't let him take the fall for something that isn't wrong. Patricia and James exchanged glances. The board will want to meet, Patricia said. Immediately. They'll need to decide how to proceed. Schedule it for tomorrow morning, before the story runs. I want to control the narrative, not react to it. After they left, Victoria and Ethan stood alone in her office. You should have let me resign, Ethan said quietly. This is going to get ugly, and I'm not worth that kind of fight. Victoria crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. You're wrong. You're worth exactly that kind of fight. You're worth standing up to the board and the media and everyone who thinks personal relationships are weakness rather than strength. I spent my whole life doing what was expected, what was safe, what protected the empire. But the empire is just buildings and money. You and Lily, you're real. You matter. And I'm not sacrificing what matters to protect what doesn't. Even if it cost you your position. Even then. Ethan pulled her close, holding her tightly. I don't want you to lose everything you've built because of me. I won't lose everything. I might lose the CEO position, might face some consequences from the board, but I won't lose what actually matters. I won't lose my integrity. I won't lose the chance to build something real with you and Lily. That's what I choose to protect. The board meeting the next morning was exactly as brutal as Victoria expected. 12 members sat around the long conference table, their expressions ranging from concern to openly hostile. Marcus Pemberton, her father's oldest friend and the most senior board member, led the attack. Victoria, these allegations are serious. If true, they suggest a fundamental breach of fiduciary duty. You promoted an employee with whom you had a personal relationship, giving him extraordinary compensation increases without proper oversight or justification. The allegations are partially true and fundamentally misleading, Victoria replied calmly. Yes, I promoted Ethan Cole. Yes, we now have a personal relationship, but the promotion came first, was based entirely on merit, and has resulted in documented savings of over $2 million annually. The relationship developed organically afterward and has been conducted with complete transparency and appropriate boundaries. The optics are terrible, another board member said. It looks like favoritism at best, corruption at worst. Only if you assume I'm incapable of separating personal feelings from professional judgment, Victoria said, which is insulting and sexist. Male CEOs have romantic relationships all the time without their professional decisions being questioned. Male CEOs don't promote their romantic partners, Pemberton shot back. Actually, they do. Regularly. They just don't face the same scrutiny. But let's set that aside. Here's what I propose. An independent audit of every decision I've made regarding Mr. Cole's employment. Review his qualifications, his performance, his compensation, all of it. If you find evidence that his treatment was anything other than merit-based, I'll accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate, including resignation. But if the audit shows what I know it will show, that he's an exceptional employee who's earned everything he's received, then we move forward with a new policy framework that allows for personal relationships between employees at different levels, with proper oversight and disclosure. The room erupted in argument. Some board members supported Victoria's proposal. Others insisted she should step down immediately. The debate raged for 2 hours, with Victoria defending not just her decisions, but the principle that caring about someone shouldn't disqualify you from recognizing their professional merit. Finally, Pemberton called for order. We'll put it to a vote. All in favor of Victoria's proposal. Independent audit, with results determining next steps. 8 hands went up, 4 stayed down. A slim majority, but enough. The motion passes, Pemberton said. We'll hire an outside firm to conduct the audit. Results will be presented to the full board within 30 days. Until then, Victoria, you remain CEO, but with the understanding that your future depends on the findings, and Mr. Cole is suspended with pay pending the results. That's unacceptable, Victoria said immediately. Ethan has done nothing wrong. Suspending him sends a message that he's guilty before any investigation has even begun. It's standard practice in situations like this. Then practice isn't appropriate here. He continues working, continues performing his duties, continues proving his value to this company. That's non-negotiable. Pemberton studied her carefully. You're willing to stake your position on this? I am. Another vote. This time 9 in favor. Ethan would continue working. The meeting ended and Victoria returned to her office to find Morgan looking anxious. The journal story posted online 20 minutes ago. It's already trending on business news sites, and Mr. Cole is waiting in your office. Ethan was standing at her windows when she entered, looking out at the city with an expression she couldn't quite read. "They're doing an audit," Victoria said. 30 days. If it shows your promotion was merit-based, we're clear. If not, there will be consequences. For you, not for me. I'm suspended. No, you're not. I fought that. You keep working. Keep proving your value. Ethan turned to face her. Victoria, you can't keep fighting battles on my behalf. At some point, you have to let me handle my own consequences. These aren't your consequences. These are the consequences of me finally choosing to have a personal life, to care about someone, to be human instead of a machine. I'm not letting you pay the price for my growth. That's not how this works. We're in this together now. Your battles are my battles. Your consequences are my consequences. Victoria crossed to him, taking his hands. Then we fight together. We face the audit together. We prove together that our relationship doesn't compromise our professional judgment. And if the board doesn't accept that, if they force you to choose between me and the company, then I choose you. I choose us. I choose the life I'm building with you and Lily over the empire I inherited from a man who died alone at his desk. Ethan's eyes glistened. You'd really walk away from all this? I'd walk away from anything that requires me to stop being the person I've become with you. The person who makes star-shaped pancakes and drives to Queens in the middle of the night and understands that mattering to someone is more valuable than any quarterly earnings report. They stood together in her office, holding hands and facing an uncertain future, when Victoria's phone rang. It was Patricia Wu. Turn on CNBC. You need to see this. Victoria grabbed the remote and switched on the television. A financial news anchor was interviewing someone via video call, James Morrison, the facilities director who'd been in the board meeting. But he wasn't talking about the scandal. He was defending Ethan. I've worked in operations for 30 years, Morrison was saying, and I've never seen anyone identify and solve inefficiencies as quickly as Ethan Cole. He's not a political hire. He's not someone who got ahead through connections or favoritism. He's someone who understands systems, who cares about the people those systems serve, and who has the courage to challenge the status quo. His promotion was one of the smartest decisions Langford Global has made in years. The anchor tried to press him on the relationship angle, but Morrison shut it down. I don't care who Miss Langford dates in her personal life. I care whether she makes good business decisions. And promoting Ethan Cole was objectively good business. The numbers prove it. Victoria's phone started buzzing with messages. Sarah Chen from the board, expressing support. 3 other executives sending similar messages. And then, unexpectedly, a text from Maria Gonzalez, the custodian whose story Ethan had featured in his presentation. Mr. Cole changed my life. New schedule means I see my grandchildren now. Tell him thank you. Tell him we're praying for him. Over the next week, more employees came forward. Maintenance workers whose overtime had been reduced. Restaurant staff whose schedules had become more predictable. Security personnel whose quality of life had improved through simple policy changes. They wrote emails, gave interviews, posted on social media, all saying the same thing. Ethan Cole had made their lives measurably better, and they didn't care who he was dating. The audit proceeded over the following weeks, investigators reviewing every aspect of Ethan's employment. Victoria and Ethan continued their routine, work during the day, family time in the evenings, the slow building of a life together while the investigation hung over them. 3 weeks into the audit, Victoria received a call from Pemberton. Can you come to my office? There's something we need to discuss. She went, expecting the worst but finding Pemberton looking tired and conflicted rather than angry. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. The audit results are preliminary, but they're conclusive. Every decision you made regarding Ethan Cole was not just justified. It was exemplary. He's performing at a level that exceeds his compensation. His recommendations have saved us more than projected, and his impact on employee morale is quantifiable and significant. You didn't show him favoritism. You recognized talent that everyone else had overlooked. Victoria felt relief wash through her. Thank you for telling me. There's more. The investigator asked to interview some of the board members about company culture, about how we evaluate employees, about what we value. And in doing so, she revealed something I'm ashamed to admit. We've become exactly what Harrison always feared, A company that prioritizes optics over substance, that values perception more than people, that has forgotten why we do this work in the first place. What are you saying? I'm saying you're right. About the policy changes, about the need for better oversight, about making space for employees to have personal lives without it compromising their professional opportunities. The full board will receive the audit results tomorrow, and I'm recommending we not only clear you and Mr. Cole of any wrongdoing, but also implement the policy framework you proposed. Victoria sat down, not trusting her legs. Marcus, why are you doing this? Pemberton was quiet for a moment. Because I watched your father build this empire at the cost of everything else. His marriage, his relationship with you, his health, his humanity. He died alone, Victoria. And I helped him build that loneliness because I thought that's what success required. But watching you fight for Mr. Cole, watching you choose love over reputation, I realized Harrison had it backward. Success without connection isn't success. It's just accumulation. The board meeting the next day was remarkably different from the last one. The audit results were presented, showing Ethan's exceptional performance and Victoria's sound judgment. The recommendation was unanimous, full exoneration and policy implementation. But it was what happened after the vote that surprised Victoria most. Pemberton stood and addressed the room. I want to say something about Victoria's leadership. For years, we've celebrated her ability to be like Harrison, strategic, ruthless, focused solely on the bottom line. But what we're seeing now is something better. She's created a company culture where people matter, where talent is recognized regardless of origin, where personal connection enhances rather than compromises professional judgment. That's not weakness, that's evolution. And if Langford Global is going to survive the next 50 years, it needs to evolve with her. The words represented a validation Victoria hadn't known she needed, not just of her decisions, but of the person she was becoming. That evening, she went to Ethan's apartment to tell him the news. She found him helping Lily with her homework. The two of them bent over a math worksheet at the kitchen table. Carry the one, remember? Ethan was saying patiently. When you add 8 and 5, that's 13, I got it. Lily wrote the answer triumphantly, then looked up and saw Victoria in the doorway. Ms. Langford, did you come for dinner? Dad's making spaghetti. Actually, I came to tell you both something important. Victoria entered and sat at the table with them. The audit is complete. They found that your dad's promotion was completely deserved and that I didn't do anything wrong. We're cleared. Lily jumped up and hugged her father. That means you don't have to leave your job? That's exactly what it means, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. And it means Ms. Langford doesn't have to choose between her company and us. But you would have chosen us, Lily said, looking at Victoria with those perceptive eyes. Right? If you had to choose? I would have chosen you, Victoria confirmed, without hesitation. That's good, because I think you should stay. With us. Like, officially stay. Victoria looked at Ethan, who was watching her with an expression of hope and fear and love all mixed together. I think I'd like that, Victoria said, if your dad agrees. He agrees, Lily announced confidently. He told Aunt Rachel last week that you're the best thing that's happened to us since Mom died. He didn't know I heard, but I did, so he definitely agrees. Ethan laughed, a sound of pure joy mixed with embarrassment. Lily, you can't just… She's right, though, Victoria interrupted. You are the best thing that's happened to me, both of you. You taught me what it means to be human, to connect, to love without reservation. You taught me that strength isn't isolation and success isn't loneliness. We're a team, Ethan said, taking her hand. The three of us. If you're sure that's what you want. I've never been more sure of anything. They celebrated with spaghetti and garlic bread, Lily chattering excitedly about the upcoming planetarium presentation, while Victoria and Ethan kept meeting each other's eyes across the table, acknowledging the magnitude of what they were building together. After dinner, after Lily had gone to bed with her chapter book and her dreams of swimming pool spaceships, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. I have something I want to discuss, Victoria said, about the future. That sounds serious. It is. I've been thinking about the foundation, about how I've been running it as a memorial to Harrison rather than a living thing that could actually make a difference. I want to change that. I want to focus on programs like the one at Roosevelt Elementary, initiatives that give opportunities to kids who wouldn't otherwise have them. And I want you to help me. Me? I'm not. You're exactly the right person. You understand what it's like to have talent that goes unrecognized because you don't have the right credentials or connections. You understand what families need, what really makes a difference in people's lives. I want to build something that matters, and I can't do it without you. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing this. What about my job at Langford Global? Keep it. This would be an addition, a passion project we work on together. We could start small, expand slowly, build something that lasts beyond quarterly earnings and stock prices. A legacy. A real one. Not buildings and balance sheets, but changed lives and expanded opportunities. Ethan pulled her close, and Victoria rested her head on his shoulder, feeling more at peace than she'd ever felt in her penthouse 63 floors above the city. Sarah would have loved this, Ethan said quietly. She always believed in building things that outlasted you, not monuments to yourself, but paths for other people to follow. Tell me about her, the real her, not just the wife you lost, but the person she was. So Ethan talked, sharing stories about Sarah's laugh and her terrible singing voice and her absolute conviction that every person deserved kindness. He talked about their early days together, about their dreams for the future, about the way she'd faced death with grace and courage. And Victoria listened, understanding that loving Ethan meant honoring Sarah's memory, meant making space for the woman who'd shaped him into the man he'd become. She made me promise something, Ethan said finally. In those last days, she made me promise I'd teach Lily to be brave, to love deeply, to build a life worth living even in the face of loss. I've tried to keep that promise, but it's been hard doing it alone. You're not alone anymore. No, I'm not. The third Saturday in November arrived clear and cold, perfect weather for a field trip. Victoria met Ethan and Lily at the planetarium, watching as Lily bounced with excitement among her classmates, clutching her presentation materials and wearing a shirt covered in planets. The children gathered in the main theater, parents and family members filling the seats behind them. Victoria sat between Ethan and Rachel, who'd driven in from Long Island for the occasion. "Thank you for doing this," Rachel whispered, "for being here, for caring about them. Ethan's been different since he met you, lighter, more like himself." "He's given me as much as I've given him," Victoria whispered back. "Maybe more." The presentations began, each child sharing their rocket designs and explaining the science behind them. Some were simple, others elaborate. All were received with encouraging applause from Miss Chen and the assembled families. Then it was Lily's turn. She walked to the front of the theater, her 7-year-old frame somehow confident despite the crowd. She set up her poster board, which showed her swimming pool rocket in meticulous detail, and took a deep breath. "My rocket is designed for long-term space travel," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Most people think rockets just need to get you somewhere, but I think they need to make the journey good too. Because space is big and scary and far from home, and humans need things that make them feel safe and happy." She explained her design: the swimming pool for exercise and mental health, the greenhouse for fresh food and psychological comfort, the large windows for viewing stars and planets. She talked about isolation and connection, about how humans aren't meant to be alone even when they're exploring the universe. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, understanding that Lily was talking about more than space travel. She was talking about life, about family, about the journey they were all on together. When Lily finished, the applause was thunderous. Miss Chen beamed with pride, and Ethan looked like he might burst from happiness. After the presentation, the children dispersed to explore the museum. Lily grabbed Victoria's hand and pulled her toward the Mars exhibit, chattering excitedly about rovers and geological formations. "You did so well up there," Victoria said. "You weren't nervous at all. I used your trick. I focused on the thing that made my rocket special and interesting, the part about humans needing connection. That's what I wanted people to understand." "You explained it perfectly. I learned it from watching you and Dad. You were both alone before, but now you're together, and you're both happier. That's what my rocket is about, making space for people to be together even when they're far from home." Victoria knelt down to Lily's level, not caring that her expensive dress was touching the museum floor. "You're very wise, you know that? Dad says I got it from my mom. She was the wise one." I think you got it from both of them, and you're using it to make the world better. That's extraordinary. Lily hugged her suddenly, fiercely. I'm glad you're part of our family now. You make Dad smile more, and you make really good pancakes. Those are excellent reasons to keep me around. That evening, after the planetarium and a celebration dinner at Lily's favorite restaurant, after Rachel had headed home and Lily had fallen asleep with her presentation materials still clutched in her hands, Victoria and Ethan stood on the apartment's small balcony, looking out at the Queen's skyline. 6 months ago, Victoria said, I was in my office administering that test, convinced I knew everything about human nature and strength and success. I thought I had it all figured out. And now? Now I know I didn't understand anything. Real strength isn't standing alone at the top of an empire. It's standing beside people who matter, protecting them, building something together. You showed me that. You and Lily. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close against the November cold. You know what's funny? That test you administered, it worked, just not the way you intended. How so? You wanted to see how people respond to crisis, what they're made of when security disappears. You got your answer. You just didn't expect the test to reveal as much about you as it did about me. Victoria laughed softly. You're right. I tested you and ended up testing myself. And I failed spectacularly at being the person I thought I was supposed to be. No. You succeeded at being the person you were always meant to be. You just needed the right reason to find her. They stood together in the cold November night, two people who'd been alone in different ways, finding warmth in each other. Behind them, through the window, they could see Lily asleep in her bedroom, surrounded by drawings of spaceships and planets and dreams of exploration. I have one more thing to tell you, Victoria said. I've been working with the Foundation Board on something, a new scholarship program, the Sarah Cole Memorial Scholarship for children who've lost a parent. Full funding for STEM education, mentorship opportunities, support services for families. I wanted to honor her memory by helping other kids like Lily, kids who are brilliant and curious but dealing with loss. Ethan's breath caught. Victoria, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me run it. Say you'll use your experience, your understanding of what families need, to make it something that really matters. Yes. Of course, yes. Sarah would have loved this. She always said loss either destroys you or it teaches you how to help others survive their own losses. This is the second thing. This is survival becoming purpose. That's exactly what it is. 3 months later, Victoria stood in the Langford building's newly renovated rooftop space, watching as construction workers put finishing touches on what would become a garden and recreation area for employees' children. It had been Lily's idea originally, mentioned offhand during a dinner conversation about how boring it was waiting for her dad after school sometimes. Victoria had taken that casual comment and turned it into a company-wide initiative, childcare support, family-friendly spaces, policies that recognized employees as whole people with lives beyond work. The board had been skeptical initially, but the data was undeniable. Employee retention was up 37%. Productivity had increased. Recruitment of top talent had become easier because Langford Global was developing a reputation as a company that cared about work-life balance. Caring about people, it turned out, was good business. Ethan joined her on the rooftop, Lily in tow. The little girl immediately ran to examine the playground equipment being installed, a rocket ship structure, naturally, with slides and climbing walls and an observation deck. This is amazing, Ethan said, looking around at the space. You've really created something special here. We created it. You're the one who showed me what employees need. I just had the resources to make it happen. Still, the scholarship program, the policy changes, you've transformed this company in less than a year. I've transformed myself. The company is just following along. Lily called out from the rocket ship playground. Ms. Langford! Mr. Dad! Come look at this. They walked over together, hands linked naturally now, that simple gesture no longer feeling revolutionary but just right. She's been calling you Mr. Dad more lately, Victoria observed. She's testing out the idea, seeing how it feels. Ethan glanced at her. How does it feel to you? Victoria considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, the idea of being any kind of parental figure would have terrified her. Now, watching Lily explore the playground with uninhibited joy, she felt nothing but rightness. "It feels like home," she said simply. That evening, in the apartment that had become as familiar to Victoria as her penthouse, the three of them sat down for dinner. It was Ethan's night to cook, and he'd made Lily's favorite, tacos, though not from the truck, homemade with care and love. "I have an announcement," Lily said importantly, setting down her taco. "I've decided something." "What's that, sweetheart?" Ethan asked. "I think Ms. Langford should just be Victoria now, because she's not just your boss anymore, she's family, and family gets to use real names." Victoria felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I'd be honored to just be Victoria." "Good. Also, I think you should move in with us, officially, because you're here all the time anyway, and it's silly to have two homes when you could just have one home with us." Ethan nearly choked on his water. "Lily, that's a big decision. We can't just—" "Why not?" Lily challenged. "You love her. She loves you. She loves me. We all love each other. That's what family is, and family lives together." Victoria looked at Ethan, seeing hope and fear and love, all warring in his expression. "She makes a compelling argument." "Victoria, we've only been together officially for 4 months. Moving in is—" "Exactly what I want," Victoria interrupted. "If you want it too. This apartment is small, and my penthouse is enormous and empty. Or we find somewhere new, somewhere that's ours together. But Lily's right. I want to be here. With both of you. Every day, not just the days I can fit around work schedules." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. I told you once that I'd choose you both without hesitation. I meant it. So yes, I want to move in. I want to make pancakes on Saturday mornings and help with homework and fall asleep next to you and wake up to Lily bouncing on the bed asking about planets. I want all of it." Ethan stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Then yes, move in. Let's build a life together. A real one." Lily cheered and immediately began planning which room would be Victoria's office and where they'd put her clothes and whether they'd get a bigger apartment or move to the penthouse. "Actually," Victoria said, "I have a different idea. What if we found a house? Somewhere with a yard where Lily could play, space for an office for each of us, room for the family we're becoming?" "A house," Ethan repeated, the concept clearly overwhelming. "Victoria, houses cost—" "I know what they cost, and I can afford it. But this wouldn't be my house that you move into. This would be our house that we choose together, equal partners building a home." "Equal partners," Lily repeated. "I like that. Can we get a cat too?" They spent the rest of dinner planning their hypothetical house, Lily's requests becoming increasingly elaborate while Ethan and Victoria shared looks of amused affection. It was normal and domestic and everything Victoria had never known she wanted. Later, after Lily was asleep and Victoria and Ethan were cleaning up the kitchen together, he said quietly, "You know this changes everything, right? Once we take this step, there's no going back to being just boss and employee, or even just boyfriend and girlfriend. This is commitment. This is family. I know. That's why I want it. What about your father's legacy, the empire, the image of Victoria Langford, Ice Queen CEO? That's not who I am anymore. That's not who I want to be. I'd rather be the woman who makes star-shaped pancakes and drives to Queens for sick kids and builds a life with people who matter. The empire will survive. But this, us, this is what I choose to protect." Ethan kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Sarah told me something once. She said that love isn't about replacing what you've lost. It's about making space for new joy while honoring old pain. I didn't understand what she meant until now. Loving you doesn't erase what I had with her. It just proves that the heart is bigger than we imagine, that there's room for all of it. The grief and the joy, the past and the future, the person I was and the person I'm becoming." "She was wise," Victoria said. "She was. And she'd be happy for us. For Lily having you in her life. For me finding love again. For all of it." 6 months later, Victoria stood in the backyard of their new house in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood, watching Lily play with their new cat, a gray tabby named Newton. The house was everything they'd dreamed of. Space for Ethan's architecture work, an office for Victoria's foundation projects, a bedroom for Lily decorated with planets and stars. and a master suite where Victoria and Ethan were building a life together. The rooftop garden at Langford Building had opened to great fanfare. The Sarah Cole Memorial Scholarship had funded its first cohort of students, and Victoria had been featured in business journals, not for scandal, but for innovative leadership and family-friendly policies. But none of that mattered as much as this moment, standing in her backyard, watching the man she loved help their daughter build a tree fort while a cat supervised from a sunny spot on the deck. Ethan caught her watching and smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had captured her heart in an office tower months ago. He said something to Lily, who nodded and continued hammering while he walked over to Victoria. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "About how I almost missed this. How if you hadn't walked into my office that day, if you hadn't responded to my test with such dignity and love for Lily, I might have spent my whole life alone in that tower believing I had everything when I had nothing. But you didn't miss it. You're here. We're here. That's what matters. I'm here because you taught me what strength really looks like. It's not standing alone at the top. It's standing beside the people you love, building something together that's bigger than any empire." Lily called out from the tree fort, "Victoria, Dad, come see. I finished the observation deck. You can see 3 whole streets from up here." They climbed up together, the 3 of them squeezing onto the small platform Lily and Ethan had built. From there, they could see the neighborhood spreading out around them, other families in other yards, living their ordinary, extraordinary lives. "This is perfect," Lily announced. "We can see the whole world from here." "Not quite the whole world," Ethan corrected gently. "Well, our whole world then, the important parts." Victoria looked at the 2 of them, this brilliant, perceptive child and this man who'd survived devastating loss and chosen to love again, and felt a completeness she'd never known existed. "You're right, Lily," she said. "All the important parts are right here." As the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Victoria Langford understood something fundamental. She'd spent her entire life building an empire from the top down, believing that height equaled success and isolation equaled strength. But real power, real success, real strength, that came from building up from the ground, from creating foundations strong enough to hold love and loss and joy and pain all at once. She'd tested Ethan Cole to see what he was made of, and in the process had discovered what she herself was made of beneath all the armor and ambition. She'd found that under the Ice Queen CEO was a woman who wanted to be known, to be loved, to matter to someone beyond her quarterly earnings. And now, standing in a tree fort with her family, while a cat named Newton meowed for dinner and the neighborhood settled into evening, Victoria finally understood what her mother had tried to teach her all those years ago. Connection wasn't weakness. Love wasn't liability. Being vulnerable enough to let people in, to build a life with them, to stand beside them instead of above them. That was the bravest thing she'd ever done. And it was worth every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of uncertainty. Because this ordinary, beautiful, complicated family life, this was everything.